Hi, good evening. And welcome to the October 12th Joint School Committees meeting. I'd like to call the Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee to order.
And I'd like to call the Concord School Committee meeting to order.
And we don't need a roll call.
No.
Okay. And so I would like to start with the student update. Hi, how are you? Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have a ton to talk about tonight. The activities fair, which I talked a little bit about last week, was a big success. We had a lot of people sign up for clubs that they otherwise wouldn't have, which was really, really great to see. I know some clubs got like 30 or 40 new members, which is really impressive. Right now, Senate is working on Spirit Week, which is a yearly tradition at CCHS. Last year it was canceled because of COVID. But like it's the week before Thanksgiving break, and the culmination is usually Maroon and Gold Day, which is really exciting. This year is going to be my first year experiencing it at the high school since I'm a sophomore. So I'm really excited to be involved in helping to plan that. We also created a list of like concerns that students have and passed them on to Mr. Mastrullo, and he was able to go through and provide feedback on those concerns, which was really, really helpful actually. I think it helped people to feel like their, I guess, concerns were being heard. So that was really great to at least get him to hear it. And also, I feel like we've really just fully settled into the new school year. Things are fully underway and classes and clubs and things like that. So yeah, it's been a good couple of weeks, and I'm sure I'll have more to report next time.
Great. Thank you, Harry. So, I mean, I'm sure you've been in a number of clubs, you've done a lot of leadership stuff. You know how hard it is to always to try to solicit information from people and to harness it and to figure out how to use it. So I'm curious, how did you go about getting these concerns? What was your outreach like for that?
Yeah, so I believe that we had a Google form that was shared with like the student body via email. So not everybody will always check their emails and respond to it. So it's definitely only like a certain group of people you get who see that and that are actually willing to go onto the form and like share concerns. But I think in general, that's probably the best way we have as student senate to like get in contact with the whole school. Other than that, I think something that's useful, and I know clubs do this sometimes, is reach out to like advisory leaders, and then advisors during advisory time will go through and share like announcements or things like that. And that's always a really good time if there's like a club that needs advertising or something like that to share. And yeah, so that's usually how we would get the word out. There's also the daily bulletin, which is published by the office each morning, and that's helpful for any announcements or things like that. So yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, good to hear.
Okay.
Good.
Well, I think we'll go to Harry. You're welcome to stay if you have work to do. You can toggle back and forth, or however you can stay with us. Or
Yeah, I'll probably hang out for a few minutes.
okay, great.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. So we have public comment now. If 15 minutes for public comment. If you are a member of the public and would like to make any comments, please virtually raise your hand with the participants tab, as I don't see any members of the public with us today in person.
No.
And I do not see any hands being raised. So I think we can go to recognitions. Mr. Booth, I wonder if you might lead us through a little bit about this, or a lot about this.
So it's my pleasure to share with you some data that comes out of the high school office, but also out of the volunteer group in Concord-Carlisle, referred to as 2 Volunteer. And this is the group that works with community agencies to provide opportunities for students who want to perform community service, either to meet their 40-hour obligation for graduation, which sets us apart from some high schools, not all. And secondly, it serves students who simply are altruistic and want to find opportunities in the community to give forward or give back, as the case may be. The 2 Volunteer group is an ad hoc group. The person who chairs it is Ann Trudeau. Jen Clark serves on it, David Holdorf, Ann Scarzy, Aaron Duggan, Laura Close, and Martha Hammer of the high school office. We want to recognize Aaron and Laura. They're stepping down after a number of years of service. And we want to note Martha Hammer's service. She not only works long and hard at that high school office, but doesn't hesitate to come to our 5 p.m. meetings and keep working when we do the 2 volunteer work. An impressive number from June of 2021, the class of 2021 contributed a total that we know about of 25,740 community service hours. A staggering number of hours. And we could spend a lot of time giving you examples of what they've done, from food kitchens to fence painting to child care, all kinds of things. What I was impressed with was how many students made their own work. You know, had a vision, got a sponsor, and then went out and did something of their own making. You know, they had this vision of how they could be useful. A couple of other pieces of information. You all got this in writing. President's Service Awards, total of 127. And then lesser awards for 50 to 100 hours, 55 were issued in the spring. 100 to 250 hours was, the 55 was both categories of President Volunteer Service. 98 students received the Rotary Club of Concord Awards for service and leadership. These were students nominated by faculty advisors. 89 seniors received the CCHS Award for volunteering 100 or more hours during their tenure. 10 students received Community Chest Awards for extraordinary service to a chest agency. So with that, you've got some data that really, I think, proves once again how committed our kids are, how in a very mature, responsible way they're ready to go out into the community and be of service to others. So we want to thank them. We want to thank Martha Hammer. We want to thank Brian Miller for admin support and everybody else at the high school who makes this possible. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Court. It's really amazing that last year they could
Yes.
still continue with that. I've heard from so many friends who are just in despair because their schools can't figure out how to reboot their community service programs. So, big.
We did debate standing down for a year and decided, no, we could do this. And, the proof is, yes, they could. The students could and did and wanted to. And in fact, might well have helped a number of students through the year to have this as a...
Saw different opportunities in the pandemic, and we're sure to take advantage of what assistance they could provide.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. We have a motion to accept minutes from September 14th and September 16th.
I have one nitpicky
Yeah.
thing that I was just going to question.
Sure.
On the 9:14 minutes, did Ms. Mesdad inform the school committee that she was resigning, or did she inform the town clerk?
Clerk.
So it's in the meeting minutes as she informed the school committee. I don't know if that matters, but for precision of documentation, I don't know.
That's the law.
That would be
too.
my only-
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
law. She needs to inform the clerk.
That's my only note.
Good,
Okay, great, thank you.
good catch.
Okay, so with that note, can we have a motion to accept the minutes of 9:14 and 9:16?
So moved.
Second.
For both, right?
For both.
Yes.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, for both.
Okay. The minutes have been accepted.
Great.
Correspondence. So we had a correspondence about some COVID protocols on the regional side, and we got a wonderful letter letting us know about the Harlem lacrosse weekend that just happened. And so just wanted to reiterate a great shout out to the boys and girls lacrosse players who participated in that, and it's just a fantastic program that it's been going on for quite a while now, and and just seems to just keep growing. So
Yes, definitely does.
so thank you.
Yeah,
Anything else?
I'm not aware of anything else.
Okay. Nothing on the Concord, no.
Nope.
Okay, all right. Chairs and liaisons reports.
I can go first.
Great.
Yeah, I don't have much to say because we're in process of trying to find some training for our committee. So I have not been that successful yet, but I am working on it. And then I will send out a doodle because I think that regardless of whether we have the training or not, we should meet again, just to, kind of check in and touch base. So that will be coming for the committee, and I'll send it to Lori also, so I have that. And then the other thing that I was working on was school committee coffees. We had talked about that. And I will send out a sign-up genius. So we're working a little bit against weather right now. So it's one of those things that, and I guess this is a question for you, Lori, can you send out dates once we have them? Can they go from info at Concord Public, or do we send them out?
Yeah, no, I can send them.
You can send them out, okay. So once we have some, I'm just going to look at the 10-day forecast, that's all we can really do. And then, worst case scenario, they go to the tents at the schools. Justin has graciously said at the PTG meeting we went to on Friday that we could absolutely go to Sanborn, because I think that's pretty central. And then we'll have one at the high school, maybe on a Saturday, maybe Sanborn during the week, and see what the attendance is like. To do in person. If we wanted to do a night one, then that I think we should do via Zoom, but that would be my own preference. And
You don't think it's good to be out in the dark under the tent?
not really, not
No.
really. And then one other idea that we had was to go into Medco Inc. Alexa and I went in there last week.
Yep.
And it was a great space in there, and we could have a coffee there, and, and I think that should be on a Saturday. And we did kind of plug that a little bit at the PTG meeting. We had a last-minute trip to the PTG meeting because they had a cancellation. So we were slotted for November, but the middle school said, can you please come? And
Sure.
so we did. And so I think it'd be a really great opportunity for Concord and Carlisle families to go in and check out the space, get a tour. They have tour guides. So that's in the works also. So waiting to hear back on that.
Excellent.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Could you speak for a moment, or could we speak for a moment to the structure of the coffees? In the sense that, I think if it's too free-form, people may be hesitant about
Sure.
engaging, and if it's too structured,
The same thing.
the same thing, yeah.
Yeah.
How do we hit that sweet spot in the middle?
I think maybe even emailing the questions in ahead of time, if people had questions that we could focus on talking to those, if they could email either Concord School Committee or the region, maybe do it that way, so we'd have some questions to start with. And then, what's really on people's minds, but we might have a few topics. I know that maybe some of Lori's goals, we could speak to some of those. We could talk budget, we could talk middle school building, we could talk about special education.
Yeah, do you think it would make sense to identify a theme or two in advance so that, again, to provide a little bit of structure
Structure.
and potentially a hook, if you will, to get people who
Yes.
are interested in something specific to attend that, specific one? It might help them prioritize. Is that?
If we were to say that we were going to provide a up to 5-minute report on 2 or at most 3 items
Yeah.
without declaring any themes, then
Mhm.
anybody could go anywhere they wanted, but they would still
Sure.
get a little bit of very concrete, hopefully practical information.
Yep.
And we
Yeah,
know,
that would
and
be
we know
great.
what people are interested in, I think.
Yeah, because I do think that, I've been to some of the principal coffees in the past, and that tends to work well when they do present something first, and then it's kind of what's on your mind after. So just to give some information, then get some feedback. Sounds good,
That's a good suggestion.
yeah.
And it was nice at the PTG president's meeting, it seems that the schools and their community offerings have a little bit come back to life with respect to being held in person. So there's a part of me that says, let's capitalize on that energy.
Yeah.
And hope that that means attendance would be pretty decent for these types of events. So that was kind of universal, which was nice to hear.
So I guess in terms of dates, it would be stay tuned for next week and
Yep.
maybe.
Be
the
flexible.
Following weekend and be flexible.
Yeah.
So I'll send a list of dates around and, then you can sign up to whichever one works for you. Make sure we don't have too many of us there.
We usually
Although-
stuck to two.
Two, right.
Two leading,
Yep,
talking, but anybody can attend as an audience member. Oh, my
Right.
goodness.
right, and that
Got
worked
excited there.
at the middle school PTG meeting, because I know that you were on at the beginning and Court
Yeah.
was on the whole time. I felt bad that Court couldn't say anything, but we appreciated you being there.
I was delighted.
It's just terrible.
No, it was great. It was
Yeah.
great. And I think that outreach, even through the PTGs is important. And, I think we should continue to do that.
Good.
Yeah,
And
I
there-
think they appreciated the opportunity to talk
Yes.
and ask
Yeah.
some questions that
Yeah.
felt authentically present there.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah, they weren't entertaining us with their questions.
No,
They had real questions.
they had real questions,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And I
they
think
were
they were
great.
happy to get, yeah, it was nice.
And we benefited as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, feedback.
Thank you, Tracy. Are there other chairs and liaisons reports?
We can speak briefly to middle school. The middle school schematic design phase is complete. Technically, information went out to estimators on Friday. I say technically because I don't know exactly what day or hour it went out, but approximately end of last week. So we're in that estimating phase right now. In, Alexa, what, about 4 weeks' time, we'll have
Yeah.
two sets of numbers
seems so
coming in.
crazy.
Our project manager will then reconcile those two independent estimates. I have reached out to try to get a little bit more information about what is and is not included in the estimate, specifically in terms of solar ready. I believe solar ready means the roof can handle it, but that's about the extent of
Right.
solar ready that would be involved in these calculations. And I want to make sure that we quantify carefully anything that's not in that estimate that is a definite known, so there are no surprises later on. But all in all, I think we're on track with our timetable.
So it's on the agenda for our Concord Public School portion. So I think, I have a
No.
couple of other questions and comments.
We'll
I'll
go
reserve
to it
those
then.
until.
Good,
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
And we mentioned the middle school. Then we have the Audit Committee coming up in another week's time. Jared and I will be there.
The CPAC is meeting on Monday, so in 6 days. Eva and I will attend there. We're meeting with Lori and Deb to go through some of the West Ed findings, and we'll report back to those guys at that meeting.
Good.
Yeah.
They have a coffee this week? Jeffrey? It's this week.
Oh, yeah, they do. They have a coffee. I hate this Monday holiday. I mean, I love it, but I hate it. I believe the CPAC is having nuts. They're having a coffee, just an informal coffee with members at Rideout Field. I remember that. It's either
It's at
tomorrow
Rideout,
morning
yeah.
or Thursday morning. I don't remember which, but that information is all available on their website and on their Facebook page and their Instagram, and they're putting it out there.
Great. Anything else? Eva?
No, that's it.
Yeah, no, yeah, okay. Then, superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. I'm going to pick highlights of what's in here, since I'm sure you could read. So a few of those. The first, and this is aligned with my goals, just like it was last year. So this is also essentially evidence collection as we go here. So My computer just froze up. Hold on a sec.
Different. Is it always been in this?
Yep.
I don't know, it looks better.
Oh, I played a little with the format. Do you like the blue shading? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, I liked it. It was.
I think they were bold last year. It jumps out better. So highlights of what's here. We are meeting with CPAC regularly. I've met with the president and Debbie Dixon already prior to any of the actual work up and running. So that was a good start. We're going to support them with some funding for occasional speakers that they're interested in, we're mutually interested in having. I'm working closely with Debbie in terms of processes and procedures she's looking to get in place consistently, and we're excited to have that happen. Most of it IEP process, obviously, but we're glad for that. And as Alexa said, we'll get the West Ed feedback to you as well. We had a great administrative team meeting here, K-12 last week, that was all Debbie for 2 hours and really set us off to a great year's worth of discussion on special ed. And Kristen's here, so I won't refer to her as the assistant superintendent. I'll use her name. She's co-leading with Debbie a MTSS, multi-tiered system of support committee that will be looking at what we're doing and tightening it up. I have to say, as I've gotten feedback from the principals this week on the West Ed report, and RTI was all through that West Ed report, even though that's regular ed, we certainly have made progress. Kristen's going to continue to hone in and fine tune and match data with tools and things like that. But the structures are there and the strategies are there, and we can always improve, but it was fun to see where we've come from. You'll hear more about the ESSER funds. Kristen did a great job of lining up really rich PD last week that I've mentioned a couple of times here. Nadine Gabb being the headline here, and having her here from Harvard to talk with those who met with her. And we're in the process of gathering data. I'm stumbling on that. This is what I love, when I can see the goals where I just stumble on it, because I wander in on a principal who's just left a data meeting and they're talking on what they just talked about and debriefing the celebrations and the questions. Admittedly, I think you're going to hear a lot of questions coming from our data this fall. It's unlike any other fall, and we all are remembering that our kids have had an enormous amount of disruption. And we're going to see that, and we are. So we'll talk more with you as time goes on as how we're addressing that. I'm also working with, as it says, Kristen and the principals on just student well-being, and this of course extends all the way through the staff and just the mindset and approach. We have not lost track of mental health. It is first and foremost in everything, and I purposely put it here in my student achievement goals, because if we don't have that, we're not going to help kids make academic gains. So Kristen's getting the Open Circle group off and running. We have challenge success data in front of us. We just met with them last week. So we're processing. We've got to get it to the staff. We will get it to you after we make our way through those steps. A lot of great information there. It's interesting to see a moment in time in the pandemic. We do have historical data to look back on, and we're already having a lot of discussion of how comparative can we be in two such very different environments. And anyway, lots to digest there. I continue to keep that in front of the faculty weekly in my emails. It's usually a piece of something that I write about. And then COVID, I'll talk quickly on some of these pieces. The dashboard's live, which is allowing me to report out on other things, which hopefully you've seen in the emails, and start to really share out our other great work going on. The vaccine mandate deadline is this week, so we're making our way through the last piece of that. Vaccines remain really strong at the middle and high school. Pretty static, but static is really strong, so that's okay. I am watching DESE webinars, 2 last week. There's a call with the commissioner tomorrow. Most of it's been focused on getting the pool testing up and running and actively routine. So we're glad to be there. We made some changes. That week off was helpful. We've got our own per diem people and CIC staff helping us, and we're back on track. So we're excited by that. Community Chest has asked me to sit on a panel next week about impact of COVID across the community. I'll obviously be there to talk about the schools. So I'm excited to have that opportunity. Let's see here. Oh, our biggest discussion right now, COVID-wise, is elementary lunch and how to bring them inside safely. Cafeteria usage. We're looking at buying desks, although an hour ago they are. We might get free desks from another district that just surplused them. Woohoo! So stay tuned. Those desks will go in the cafeteria. We just have seen that structure really work at the middle and high school to the point where we don't want to move the desks out of there and put them at the elementary. We also needed something more adjustable for the little kids. And we've been trying to strategize tables, and the structure matters a lot is what we believe. So individual desks come into the cafeterias at the elementary schools. Our goal there is November 1st. Just so you know, nothing goes as planned. We've had a bee issue this past week or two. Alcott actually had to come inside. They were so bad. We need a hard frost, but then that means it's really cold. So no perfect answer.
I think every district we have it. We have no trash outside.
Yeah.
You have no what?
Trash.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That helped a lot.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yep.
Friday, they were eating lunch with the kids, pretty much, so we'll keep strategizing that. Budget's all the rest of the night, so I won't talk too much on that. In collaborating with all the other leaders, but especially Andrew and his DI director role, we're meeting and talking a lot. He's rolling out the survey. He's working on his entry plan. I did go into Boston too, not to the same event, but I was there the week prior with the superintendents and MECO directors. It's worth noting out loud that there's a very different thing happening in MECO enrollment than has historically happened. It's a combination, some pandemic impact where in general, Boston school enrollments are off, but it's been a slow evolution of different opportunities for Boston families within the city, whether it be private, charter, exam schools. There's just a lot more than there was when MECO first came to be, so we're having a really active discussion on what our processes can be that will still facilitate and streamline enrollment. We've made a lot of changes to the process because of civil rights and DESE requirements, which were needed, but it's also changed the response rate or the availability of families knowing what the options are. So there's a lot we're talking about at a high level. Just so you know, for example, we normally take 10 to 12 kindergartners. We've only had 6 this fall. There weren't others to bring in. So it's significant. It's the sustainability of the entire program if you take it to the next level of discussion. So it was a great meeting, a lot of great brainstorming. It's the first time we've all been together just talk on that as a topic. So I expect there will be more of those to come. And then just the building project, which I know we're also going to talk on later. Really gearing up for information to get out to the community. So Alexa and Heather on the communications subcommittee are getting schedules made, so more will be ready to go out
More
shortly.
challenging than we anticipated,
Yeah.
scheduling.
Always is with the
This is a
scheduling.
busy time. They're
Yeah.
all busy times
Yeah.
of year, but.
So, and we'll talk more on that later. So those are my highlights. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have questions, Court?
I'm concerned about the Metco enrollments. It strikes me that the incoming class represents about the smallest number that would keep the program even viable.
Yeah.
There's no science to what number is right, but
Right.
it's an alarming number.
Right.
And I wonder, streamlining enrollment might be one thing, but it's getting potential enrollees is the bigger issue, it seems to me, so.
Right. We were talking a full-blown marketing campaign when I was at this meeting of different kinds, shapes, all the way from basics of just even inviting parents to an open house we were at the Roxbury Library, which is also gorgeous, and a little bigger, I think. Just open opportunities like that, as well as other marketing tools themselves. Yes, I agree with you. At some point, you don't have enough kids for a cohort. Although we're one of the bigger programs, some districts don't take as many. There are things on both sides to consider. Our entry points are K6 and 9. Those can get talked about. There's different pros and cons to why they're K6 and 9. So that's an option we could discuss, because we didn't bring in as many kindergartners, but we could have maybe added other first, second, or third graders. So there's many variables here. I agree with you. It is the sustainability of the program. So we're all on board of trying to dissect this a bit. It was a really great meeting, and I think METCO Inc. is going to take the lead, which is exciting. And every district comes in with its own perspective too, depending on the size of your program, the
Sure.
distance from the city,
Right.
many layers, many layers. So.
Of the 6 incoming, we're most able to partake of the 3 weeks in the summer?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Good, good, good.
Yeah.
Um,
It's also worth noting, we only started
Yeah.
third year because of this issue.
Although we do benefit from having these kids K-12,
Absolutely. So
terms of-
there's the balancing act.
and for many reasons.
Right.
It's not just educational, it's social.
Right.
Is there any way that you can send us the enrollments for districts around us?
Sure. I
Just so-
assume between us all, we can get that for you, no problem. See the size of
Yeah.
the different
programs, like-
organizations. Just to tell you one of the biggest differences, it was just a few years ago that MECO literally had a waiting list where,
Yes.
families were putting newborns on the list.
Yes.
DESE, for all the civil
Yes.
rights reasons, said no more.
Yeah.
And now it's an annual application. And so that's a very big difference. It's all
It is.
electronic with some options at MECO Inc. for working through that if you don't have access. That's a pro and a con too, I think. So
Do you
it's a lot of
provide,
changes.
in your role, feedback to these guys on enrollment? It's interesting. I would normally not bring this up in this meeting, but if you do that, I have a couple friends who were in the surrounding classes that I were, who were in MECO. They now, of course, have kids that they want to enroll in the program.
Right.
And what's been really challenging is they'll say, because they keep in touch with idiots like me who move back here, and a lot of us do in Concord, as you probably know, and they're like, when they go to apply, they say, I want my kid to go to
Yep.
Concord.
Yep.
And they're told to buzz off, and so,
We talked about
from their
that.
perspective, it's like, but I know people there, and I can
Right.
give a call to someone if I'm going to be late for work, or if I'm going to be, late to the game. Hey, can you take my son or my daughter? And that's just, I was really surprised to hear that feedback. I was thinking that
Absolutely, it was
kind of a
part of
bummer.
our discussion.
Yeah,
The flip side of that is if they all get to,
pick.
and I'm speaking for the other districts,
Yeah.
because I tend to agree with you, because it benefits us. The other districts might say, well, then they're all going to go to other places because we don't have that same alumni.
Because they're
theater that
they're
we
newer.
could-
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
don't know.
appreciate
They're
that.
just-
And I think
anyway, if you're,
it was on the list,
Okay,
absolutely.
great.
It was absolutely on the list, so.
yeah.
So I'm glad we're to this point. I think I've been kind of one of the superintendents nudging for this to become the primary discussion.
Good.
So I was glad to see, and it was a really great meeting. So I think more to come.
Yeah.
Yep.
The social emotional learning program adoption, is this a small ad hoc that will come out with a recommendation, or what's happening?
No, it's a 25-member committee, and it includes teachers, the guidance counselors from the 3 elementary schools, and our social-emotional learning expert, Rachel Polliner. And so we're doing the whole program review. We kind of were forced into this position because Open Circle is shutting down.
Right.
So we've been really, really happy. We were one of the founding members with Open Circle. And so now we're looking for a new program. So luckily, there are a lot of great programs out there. So we'll take what's called the CASTLE, which is the Social Emotional Learning 5 quadrants,
Right.
and evaluate. We're creating a list, but it looks like about 10 different programs right now, including creating our own. Or building off of what we had done with Open Circle. So, and then we'll ask for volunteer teachers to pilot test whatever we choose, and then the teachers vote whether we want to adopt that one or try something out different. So it's a 2-year process.
2 year,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's an interesting opportunity because the middle and high schools are more established in what we're feeding the kids up to. So I think we've got a really great opportunity for vertical alignment, starting with the elementaries, which before it was the other way around. So nice way to loop back.
ESSER 3, we're going to get to that later, if
Yeah.
I'm correct. My final question, so thank you for this report. District Cultural Competency Committee and Literature Review for Cultural Competency. Is the latter, the literature review, part of the Cultural Competency Committee?
Yeah,
So
two separate things.
The K-12 Cultural Competency Committee is a steering committee for all of our curriculum and cultural and professional development work. And then now it's K-12 Literature Review Committee is looking only at our core texts that all kids would study. And last year, we started looking at this middle school and high school texts, and this year, we're talking about what we're doing mostly at the elementary school. So we've set up a process for looking for bias in works of literature, and then also looking for positive representation. And so we have this we've created our own tool from 3 different tools of how you analyze literature, and it's pretty high level. So imagine, every happy English teacher saying, we all get to read lots of great books. So that's what we're doing. Basically, I'm reading a novel a week because of this committee. So they're really good, and we're considering a lot of new texts.
I'm trusting there's lateral communication between the two groups.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, a
Very
lot
much
of
so.
committees, a lot of committee members in general.
And Andrew's a
common.
pivot between them as well, obviously.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah.
I just had a question. I don't know if this is more appropriate during the COVID update, but cafeterias at the middle and high school, is there any movement to get those back into kids sitting at tables together?
Well, I'm open to your feedback on that. I don't feel like that's a standalone discussion. It is clearly the spot where their masks are off at the
Yeah.
moment. And if distance is of any priority to us, the tables make that much more challenging. But I'm not in any place to make
Right.
individual decisions on any of these different pieces. I think right now, the expectation was to try to keep them not apart, but able to have some space while they're eating. So they are on individual desks. I think we thought we wanted to get the cold weather under our belts just to see, they're eating outside, like very few are inside. A
Right.
day like today, I was over there, there's,
Right.
flows of kids through all the different directions. So that was one thing we had in mind, was get to the November and see how it felt to get them all in. But if you want to encourage us to move that along faster, we can.
Yeah, I mean, I do think just anecdotally, from kids and friends of my kids, I think the high school is really wanting that.
I'm sure.
The kids are
Yeah.
really wanting that.
Yep.
The middle school, they love lunch outside.
Yeah.
That should never
Yeah.
change. They love it because
Yeah.
it's enough time, it's more time than they had before, when they would eat and then go outside. And
Yeah.
now that they're doing it all
Yeah.
at the same time, they love it. But I do think that social piece for some
Sure.
kids that, might not be athletes, they might not be involved in anything, and lunch is really
Yep.
their only time to socialize with other kids. I think we just have to
Yeah.
keep an eye on that. And so
No
maybe that's more
question.
appropriate during our COVID discussion, but.
Yeah,
And I'd like to hear from our counselors, They-
yeah, absolutely.
Because, this Lexington teacher tweeted on Twitter, some kids might have lost their only friend during the pandemic. So they're coming back to school just sort of very.
Sure, absolutely.
And, I think having desks makes that sort of even more difficult to slide in and sit with a group of people.
Yep.
Try to
No
reconnect.
question.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we could get feedback from
Yep.
some of our administration to what their perspective is. I'm not an expert, so.
And I think it's for us as a district to decide which priority is which versus,
No, I
distance
understand.
versus-
Yes,
so
absolutely.
We aren't making decisions in isolation, so give us feedback and we'll go back and talk.
Cool.
Great.
I had a question about the creation of a multi-tier system of supports at the high school. If you could speak to, how you're pulling the kids in at those different levels.
Yeah, and I'll let Kristen grab it, but it's all data-driven. And it's built into their schedules.
So we assess all ninth and 10th graders in reading, writing, math, and social emotional. For the academic subjects, we use the STAR 360, which is what we use since kindergarten. So now we have a tool that tracks kids all the way through. And Carlisle uses it as well, K to 8, so we have their data as well. And then for the social emotional, we use the pair assessment. And so with any of those, if a kid is falling at kind of the lowest level is like a warning level, or, kind of right on the crosshairs of the fence, we have a team that meets at every school, and at the high school we do. That's a pretty large team. And it includes the school psychologists and the interventionists, so whoever works with them in reading, writing, math, and then the counselors for social emotional. And they decide who's going to get it, the interventions. And so they would meet usually 3 times a week, sometimes twice a week, for 12 weeks in a small group. So I observed a reading intervention the other day. There were 4 students in there with 1 certified reading interventionist. So they were working, all those students had the same reading struggle, so they were working on the same topic.
Okay, thank you.
So it's about a semester long, yeah.
And then I also had a question about the social emotional correspondence to teachers. Does that also include the kids on 504 plans?
So this is I do a Sunday blast out to the teachers, and it's general in terms of social emotional. It's bigger picture, broader, more under the umbrella of the challenge success types of things we've done, or in the pandemic, make connections and relationships first. Much broader, usually some sort of journal article about ways to do that and the importance of doing that. So it's not specific to kids of any particular need, it's about all kids and what they need. So just keeping it in front of us.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask, Chris was piggybacking on Eva's question about the STAR. So, I've got 3rd graders, right? So they take their little STAR at the beginning of the year, and then sort of, if you could draw a flow chart, where does their little test go? Who are the first set of eyes that see it? What do they do with it? I know what they do with it. You've answered that robustly. But who is that first point of contact that assesses the assessment, I guess?
Yeah, so I think this is a whole meeting.
Yes, it is.
Because that is
Yeah.
literally what our committee is doing.
Yeah.
But to give you sort of the 30-second answer, the tech specialist at each of the schools and the usually building principal, but whoever runs the
Yep.
multi-tiered system of support, they would identify, the kids get ranked, who's doing great,
Yep.
who's struggling, and who's really struggling. We have very few kids in the really struggling area. And then there are what we call data meetings. And so they decide, that, a team, usually the teachers, the building administrators, counselors, it depends on what the subject is. They decide what the intervention's going
Got
to be.
it.
If it's something in the classroom, is it something they get to get pulled out for and work with an interventionist? Or if they're already on a 504 or a IEP that has what the services are,
So
they'd get
okay.
that.
So and then that group would meet and then sort of update the gen ed teacher, the lead teacher at the elementary level in the classroom, for example.
Well, at the elementary level, the grade level teachers are in the
In the
meeting.
team.
Oh, yes.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Got it. Okay.
Critically involved.
Yeah, that's what Wednesday afternoons usually are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I'm going to do the quick COVID.
Quick
Report
COVID
here.
update.
It's been nice to see cases slow down. So we've been at 2 or 3 a week, or somewhere in there. 2 last week. 31 total. Quarantines have been very, very few. Test and stay has been a success. I do want to name, we had one breakthrough case, one school transmission case last week with an adult in the room positive, and 4 days later, a student positive. Interestingly enough, that child was PCR tested outside of school for another reason. The kids who stayed, that child stayed a day or two and tested negative, and then had, that same day wasn't tested. We wish the child had been tested antigen before the PCR, and that isn't how the timing worked out. But we do believe that was school transmission. We're glad that it was the only one. The others all did test and stay, and there were no positive cases. So we're just keeping an eye on how this all is going, but overall, it's going very well. Vaccination rates remain really strong, as you see here, stable and strong. Testing participation, which I thought might be the piece you were most interested in, now that we're back on track. Last week, we tested 1,600 kids, 1,654, 348 adults. The numbers are really great at the elementary schools, good at middle, and very low at the high school, with only 115 kids. So we'll do our best to continue to promote and encourage that, and we can talk more on it if you'd like. And then one last piece, DESE, like I said, has been focused on the testing protocols without a lot of other information on unmasking or anything like that. Point of clarity, Hopkinton is getting a headline about being the first state. My colleagues have connected with Carol, the super, and they've just submitted the paperwork. They don't have a timeline to unmask. They've just done the documentation. So that's an important distinction. I don't believe the Globe reported it quite that way. So the other big development today was the National Guard being called up to assist with pool testing. I did get invited to the webinar, which is how you got invited to the National Guard assisting. I checked in with our lead nurse. Between our per diem people and CIC help, we do have some regular CIC help now, not as much as we thought, but between the two, we're doing fine. So we've declined and want to let those resources go out to the districts that really haven't even been able to get up and started. So grateful for the creativity of the state as it tries to get everything going. So not a lot different. I think you've mentioned a really good couple of points that I'll certainly follow up in and get back to you on.
Are there any questions? No.
I guess not.
No discussion? No.
I don't know, well,
No.
when will you find out if you'll get those surplus desks? I mean, that seems kind of,
This was literally at 6:05.
nice work. Yeah, that could be interesting.
That way we don't have to purchase
You and I
anything.
chatted this
Yeah.
afternoon, but.
No, we're all hesitating on
yeah.
purchasing more desks, and we did do a lot of due diligence last week on what the options were, although if we free desks up at another school, that is it's a potential. I'm not sure the littlest kids can sit at the big desks, but we haven't vetted all that exactly.
Right.
We really brainstormed a lot with the principals, the CTA, trying to really strategize these tables that we have in the cafeteria with the unvaccinated students. So we did land on individual seating being the best option, but we're still pursuing a number of ways to get there. So.
Okay.
And can I ask, where are all of the high school tables now and the middle school tables? Are they in FODS? They're
Yeah.
in storage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Because it just might be interesting to, as a step towards unmasking, if that's the direction we decide to go in, and I'm not suggesting that, but, the cafeteria, there aren't teachers necessarily in the cafeteria, yes, there's staff, but I think that a lot of these kids, if they're sitting at the table with their friends, they're also socializing outside of school with these same kids.
Yep.
And that might just be a step to, at some point, we're going to have to see what happens. And it's a short period of time, only while you're eating, which is probably 10 minutes in most cases, and then if they take a walk outside or wherever they go after that, but that just might be something to consider.
So
'Cause I think there's
report
some
back on that in
appetite for
2
that.
weeks?
Yeah,
Is that
that'd be
a good,
great.
a good plan?
Yeah, great.
Okay,
Good.
good. I'm going to include the middle school since they're, at least Sanborn where they're vaccinated.
Definitely,
Okay.
definitely.
And hopefully then we'll have a little more guidance from DESE also about how.
Yeah, I'm
what
hoping-
Paths
yeah.
forward, maybe, yes, I guess that might be
Guidance
optimistic.
from Jesse on, like,
Anything.
On anything, on anything. I mean, there still hasn't been anything added to the.
No.
anything added to what they've
metric.
done like a
Exactly.
month
No.
ago.
No.
Yeah,
Right,
sure.
They're just in a holding pattern of, we'll give you some more guidance on how you can work
Right.
towards unmasking
Yeah.
soon.
Sometime.
And I do know, just final thought, we're trying to work with the town to be ready for a vaccine clinic for the youngest
Great,
kids. CDC,
Waiting
I
for that
think, is saying
It's
maybe
in.
early November even, which
Yeah.
is pretty exciting. So keep you posted on that.
Great.
also.
Great.
One more question, it's not in your report. Have you heard of our staff getting boosters?
Yes. They've asked if they have to submit them with the mandate, and I said it was up to them at this point. We haven't mandated a booster, so.
In terms of absences, are we sort of trying to plan for? if they're-
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of the
Okay.
meeting time because the availability is flexible enough, but
No,
we
but I'm
would,
saying then, I haven't heard, people don't feel so well.
Is,
I have not heard that.
is
This-
there guidance on the boost? Like I feel
There
as
is,
a
yeah.
citizen of the country, like that there's not a tremendous amount of
There
clarity.
is, there
There
is.
is?
There
Yeah.
is.
So you would consider a school a high-risk environment? and
Oh,
it's-
okay, so,
Yeah.
okay, so
CDC
that's why. Okay, so
specifically
that makes
called
sense.
teachers
I forgot, yes,
out, yeah.
Walensky added that, I
Yeah,
forgot that.
Yep.
yeah.
Great, sorry.
Correct.
Yep,
They sort of said,
Slipped my
senior
mind.
citizen, blah, 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 at the end, they said,
Right.
yeah.
You know,
I forgot about that addition. Thanks for clarifying.
Great.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
great, thank you. All right, Jared.
Sure, why don't you pass those? I'll let you share.
Thank you.
So Jared's going to, before I just hand it to him, we're just going to set a little context while he gets ready. So this is our normal timeline, pre-COVID, that in October, we would bring you preliminary information that informs the budget bill. Some of the history here is that the Finance Committee in Concord's always asked for this kind of information with this timing. It's evolved in the 5 years that I've been here, where we literally, my first year, went bullet by bullet and wrote a paragraph or pages under each question. And it wasn't a user-friendly format. So we've made changes and worked with the Finance Committee to make those changes. So there's a lot of really clearly presented financial information given to them, and more of the narrative is either done verbally, and you'll see Jared, because of the nature of some of the ways they're approaching it this year, put some things to paper. We have a really successful relationship with them over the last few years, but this is your presentation, and this is a working night, really, to give you the first round of some of these numbers. Much of it is closure of FY21, which in combination with currents of FY22 is what's going to inform a lot of FY23 while we zero base it. So it's a lot of important background. I think the big disclaimer tonight is COVID impacted everything.
Yeah.
We said to you as we built budgets, we're building things we're not sure about. That proved to be true. But we built them in a way that allowed us to make things happen and ebb and flow with that pretty successfully, and still have reserves at the end of the year and meet the needs of our kids and meet the needs of the staff, and be where we are coming into this school year. So it's a lot of numbers. You help us know what you need to understand what those numbers mean. Jared's got backup to most of it off the top of his head, but if he doesn't, he's happy to get it to you. If you have things you want to talk on how it's framed for the Finance Committee, that also can be part of the discussion. We purposely bring this to you first so that we bring it to them with a highly informed discussion behind us already, and the guidance you want to give us on how to present it. So with that, I will turn it over to Jared, and he's going to get started. This is all regional, and then we'll do CPS later tonight.
Thank you. So as Laurie said, when I came here 4 years ago, it was a completely different ask. We just responded in email. So that first year, that summer, Laurie said, let's take control of this. Let's not only answer their questions, but what do you want to show the public? What do you want to show the school committee? And at the time, I was still diving deep, trying to learn the budgets, and that helped me really learn the FY18 and how the FY19 budget was built. So what we did is we started this format back in FY19 and incorporated their asks, but then so much more. And in fact, we met with Parashaw, who's the chair of the guideline committee, a few times over the summer, and they don't want all of this, or he doesn't, I wouldn't speak for all of them. They did not ask for all of this information. What the information they're asking is in the guideline. So what we did again is we incorporated what we could in their letter into this report. There are a couple things that we could not do. I'll start with FY22. FY22, we're at the beginning, even though we're 5 months in, we're at the beginning of, the spending phase. We're still dissecting it. We haven't even made any transfers yet. The first variance report will be sent to you, as always, really the first meeting in November, if not the last meeting in October. So that's something that we've never given an update on in these letters. But what we did do is we gave an update of the FY20 actuals versus the FY20 budgeted, and then we really focused on the FY21 adopted versus the actuals. So what I'd like to do is, this memo that I put together today can sort of drive the conversation. I could talk about this for hours. We don't have hours, but I can go as quickly or as slowly as you'd like. So just starting with the beginning, as Laurie said, this was a budget like I've never seen before. It was unpredictable. The spending patterns were unpredictable. If you remember, we closed in March of 2020. Therefore, was it 2020 or 2019? 2020. Therefore, the budget was essentially frozen on our supplies, materials, saving money on utilities. So going into the beginning of next year, of FY21, we didn't pass that budget, if you remember, till the fall. So we didn't start any of our spending until town meeting. Therefore, there was a sort of a halt on our ordering. Everyone used up what they had in FY20, and those really impacted these numbers: supplies, materials, equipment, utilities, etc. So that's why we're seeing a ton of swings in some of these numbers. Not as many as I actually would have thought, but there are lines that are normally used that were just not used. Every quarter, every month, I give you all updated variance reports. And what those show, if you remember, is they just show the 100 or the 1,000 series. All of the budget transfers are in there. So none of these numbers should be really any surprises to you all. We keep our budget in balance really at all times after the first variance report is presented. We identify all transfers. A lot of transfers come from departments saying, science wants to make a transfer from equipment to supplies and materials. We use the contingency account, which is in the 2000 series, really to offset a lot of the transfers that are not department controlled, such as salaries. Mostly salaries. I use that contingency account for that. So what this report shows and gives you, starting with the final actuals of the 1000 series. The FinCom was asking to really highlight anything that had over a 10% variance. And what we do is we roll it up to the 1000 series. Really, the only 10% delta, while the 2000 series did have a $382,000 savings, that's only about less than a 3% delta. The ones that sort of stick out right here are the fixed assets. The fixed assets were, that is where we had the increase to the stabilization account of $200,000. Essentially, that was not initially budgeted, so that's $200,000, and then we purchased the electric bus. So that makes up the $568,000. Programs with other districts, tuitions. Tuitions are our most fluid, vulnerable, volatile expense that we have. They're oftentimes, while during the budget process, we zero base them. We know exactly what we have at that set in time. We also have a watch list, and we put in sort of a contingency on that. But to do even though I did say maybe a month ago that we could maybe project the tuitions. It's just something that I did not feel comfortable doing, especially with a special ed director that's only been here for, 6 weeks. So that is something that, again, we were not comfortable really projecting. Everything else, we were. Please.
Why? Like, so don't we know who's where? Or do people make requests of the, I mean, I know that they can.
No, it's more about students who are not enrolled right now. We get a move-in that we don't expect, which does
Okay.
happen. Depending on the placement, it could be a couple $100,000 potentially. So that's the real challenge, is
Okay.
you can't predict that, so
People coming and going.
people coming and
Okay.
going.
I
Yeah.
thought,
An example of where we need narrative in our response to the FinCom, so they understand, right? They can read it. We don't have to tell them.
Sure.
I completely get it, but we have to understand why it's not predictable.
Yep.
And
sure,
so,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
the
It was-
important thing.
I just wanted to make sure.
The other thing they specifically asked for was E&D, circuit breaker, and revolving accounts. Now, I know, like in FY '21, our athletic revolving accounts soared,
Yep.
so I think we need to call that out.
Yep.
And then we did have a large E&D, which we dealt with, but
Yep.
we need to call that out. And I don't know the status of circuit breaker.
Yeah, so all of that is in here, and I will speak to that. But we did highlight enrollment, OPEB. OPEB right now we're getting our valuation in 2022. The numbers are changing. Right now, we have 550,000 that we offset, but without that valuation, the one that we have currently is outdated. I am comfortable saying that the FY '23 will have probably the $550,000 offset in there, and I do have some narrative in this budget book on OPEB. Circuit breaker is just based off the tuitions. It's based off current tuitions, what we can apply towards that. We always project during the budget season, because when we do our zero base, that's when we put in our circuit breaker offset that's in the budget. So that's not something that we would give a 5-year. It's just not doable. The other one was, what did I miss? Oh, athletics revolving. That is something that I was talking to Laurie about today. We're going to do sort of an analysis. I was talking to Ian Rames as to what is the full cost of athletics. Because while it does show that athletics has certainly a high balance, there is a reason why they don't have a cap on an athletic revolving account, because many districts use that, increase it to pay for, not saying that we are doing it, but to pay for turf fields, to pay for equipment. There are things that we are going to have to do in the next year or two that will use up some of that money. Talking to Aaron Jonkus, the fitness room equipment, stuff like that. But what I want to do.
Separate conversation, I think is really important. I have strong feelings about that. So,
Sure.
I don't think we should propose that in a public way until we have a full
Sure.
body discussion about, because I think we increased the fees a couple of years ago because we were in such concern that we could fund our baseline athletics. So then to turn around and start using that money for other purposes that we did not intend, I think we have to have a.
Right, so what we were talking about was giving you a status on now that we're fully operational again and all of athletics is running and the coaching and all of that, giving you a true expense and revenue report. We completely hear the concern about the balance. I even said to Jared, maybe we need to, after we do this analysis, do we not charge athletic fees for a while till the balance isn't what it is and we're all back to comfort, bring you the other needs to consider too, and just do a full sweep of everything related to that account and the athletic program and what the options are. So we definitely hear you there.
And we are a district that does fund quite a bit of athletics out of the general fund.
Exactly.
So that's also something that,
Yes.
I think we need to get the big picture
Yeah.
once again.
And-
Yeah.
and it
When
was-
we-
Understand.
It
Right.
was the school committee that increased those fees by 50%. So,
Right.
given the magnitude and the fact that this was
Yep.
formally our responsibility, I think we've got to be in the room when this
Definitely.
gets debated.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And even to understand what gets paid out of that budget and how many coaches, because I know that with every sport, there's also a parent booster club that's also fundraising for assistant
Absolutely.
coaches and things like that. So I think we need to
Yep.
look at a lot of that.
And coaches are budgeted out of the general fund. But again, the last 2 years, because especially, the beginning of FY '21, the end of FY '20, we charge some things to the general fund to keep that balance rather high. So I'm interested actually in diving deep into the athletic revolving. That's not something, Ian Rames knows it very well. He's the assistant business manager. But I'm interested in certainly diving deep. And
Yeah, the last time we did it was the year we ended up recommending an increase. Some of that is, the driver there was the cost of the field maintenance that was coming out of the general budget, and the way in which we were trying to offset some of that. And the athletic fees and balance at the time couldn't sustain the costs of the maintenance to the fields. A lot has changed since then. One is we have more economical ways to maintain those fields. Two, the balance is higher. Three, COVID impacted everything, and now it's artificially high.
Yep.
And let's go back and do the deep dive. I completely agree.
Good.
Yeah. Me
Why don't you
too.
go through the memo?
Sure, absolutely.
We'll go use
So budget updates. What they asked for, again, was a budget update. I went over the 10% deltas that were in there, identified those. Again, it was the fixed assets as well as the tuitions. We do have a section on tuitions on page 11 that just goes over the actuals of our tuitions. And again, we will be projecting during the budget season where we're at and giving you exactly the clear picture.
To Cynthia's point, we can flesh out a little more of why it's hard to predict or impossible sometimes.
Yep,
And two, a few more definitions of all the jargon that's there.
Yep.
great. Spending levels. At this time, we expect really no changes in the spending levels. We do a zero-based approach. As you know, we were going to absolutely continue doing that. But we do not anticipate any big changes in spending levels. Capital, the 5-year capital is in this report. That is really the memo and the I wouldn't necessarily say recommendations, sort of, but what the administration was floating out there. And during the FY '23 budget process, we're going to have a lot of discussions
Can
on
you
that.
put in actual, the year capital plan that you showed us a couple weeks ago as a draft?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
that'd be good.
Enrollment. So actually, this is something that we were able to add in today. So the enrollment impacts. We did a 5-year projection. We went through Carlisle's data and just rolled everything up. And we're comfortable with the numbers that we came up with, and that is
So I'll play
Yeah.
background information here, just so everybody has the same reason we're talking about this. The assessments every year needs to get split between the percentage of kids in Concord and Carlisle as of October 1st, which just passed. We're always trying to project that forward because that can have swings to either community, not of an operational nature, but just in terms of the bottom line, how it divides out. And it's just a number that matters a lot to the communities usually because it can be substantial depending on how the numbers are swinging or not for enrollment. So something we try to keep a really close track of. It is still a regional budget, and I think we're all trying to really stress. It's a regional budget. These aren't pieces that either, they're paying for their kids who are at the school, but it does have financial, sometimes significant impact either direction. So always try to keep a watch on that.
Right.
This year, it's fairly stable, very, very stable, actually, so it's a very minor shift, and I think that'll make this year a little simpler.
So yeah, so the result of this year is a .09 assessment shift from Carlisle to Concord. We're estimating the shift impact to be about 32,000. That will go up slightly in FY '23. It will, 24, yep, 24. Hold My eyes are going.
Computer too.
I know. So page 14 does give, right now, a 5-year picture that will certainly help Carlisle especially know their impact, especially that in FY '24.
We're happy to do different dives into all that and what we know and predict.
Education reform and mandates, at this time, the district does not anticipate any reform or
Of course,
mandates.
that just makes me laugh, like, everything's different, and we're saying there's no reform or mandate. But there were years where they were putting out directive after directive after directive. Kristen knows, we both were in the curriculum world at the time, and it was really hard to keep up. So.
Then we have a section on COVID, and it's important to point out that our COVID costs are different than necessarily what the grant is showing, because we also incur COVID costs in the general fund. So the region received $612,000 in COVID grants, but we've only expended $297,000. That was the CARES Act. Of the 4 grants. And the total amount the district spent on COVID, though, was $365,000. The general fund covered approximately $68,000. And we have the a chart that explains, the categories of the expenditures. And we have backup for all of that if you're looking for more information on that. Again, special education tuitions. Page 11 of the report, we give summarizes the FY20 and the FY21 tuitions by the funding source. Good news on E&D. So right now, we're projecting E&D to be about 4.9%. DOR has to certify that. They usually do that in early winter, I should say, early, maybe January, February, after they set all the tax tables. So technically, right now, we have E&D is 0. That's the way it works. You have a 0 E&D until it's certified. It doesn't mean you can't necessarily increase the budget, but you would have to wait for a stabilization reason or something like that. You would have to wait until your budget is your E&D is certified. But that's really good news. Really, all of the numbers that we were projecting in the springtime held, and so that's why there's really no surprises here. Transportation, we have 22 buses, 1 wheelchair. That just gives, we just like to give an update on that. The electric bus, or both electric buses, really no timeline on that. Hopefully soon, especially for the first VW1. Collective bargaining.
Can I just comment on that?
Please.
We've come a long way on the management of the fleet. When I walked in, 2017, it was a very different picture. We had gotten behind. We had started to make progress, and there was still a lot to make. So the fact that we're at a nice, stable place where we're keeping the fleet, predictably under control here with reasonable mileage, that, maintenance isn't becoming an issue to the point where we have unreliable transportation, which we did, I promise. Anyway, there are stories to back that up. So it feels like we're in a much better place, and I think the replacement plan will keep us in one.
Next, we do have an OPEB section. We do expect that valuation to be completed by January 2022. We have an OPEB contribution of $550,000 in the FY22 budget. I would say right now we're anticipating that to be the same, but it may go up in FY24's budget. We do have one of the largest, if not the largest, OPEB balances of any region in the state, which is it's excellent. We did take advantage of interest rates this past year, so more money was put into OPEB based on the interest rate percentage. So more information to come on that. And let me know if you have specific questions on OPEB. I'm happy to get those in advance, because I'm still learning about OPEB, even though I've been dealing with it for 10 years.
I had just mastered the ARC, and then they said, no, we're not going to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that
they
anymore.
don't call it that anymore.
It changes.
One of the questions that comes up periodically is if most districts are not where we are, will we be punished someday when everybody else gets bailed out? But that's a conversation this town has in a number of ways,
Right.
around a number of things. So
Yep.
I think we're doing the right thing,
I
but
Yeah.
I
the
do
question's
agree.
out there.
I've been asked, yes.
I don't know how they're gonna get bailed out, so I would keep funding it. I think it's one of the best things that Concord started doing.
I actually think some of the laws have caught up that mandate some more funding to it, because I'm seeing it, like the collaborative, some other places that maybe hadn't been able to be as aggressive are working at it differently.
Yep. And what happens too is they're paying as they go, so they're paying more. So you're saving because you're offsetting, you get an interest and everything. So those districts are actually paying more than they would if they had, an OPEB account.
Remind me, is that an investment management coming at us from the town?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep. There's a committee, I'm not on it, but there is a trust. Yep. Debt service, good news about the debt service. Debt service is continuing to go down. If you remember last spring, we completed a bond reoffering of the outstanding $32,500,000. As a result of the reoffering and lower than expected interest rates, the district is going to save about $3.1 million between now and 2038. So that is actually the reason why, if you went back to that 1,000 report, the 800 series, which is debt and retirement, that is our refinancing costs, and our Moody's. Our Moody's call last year also was an unexpected cost. So that's the reason for that. Health insurance. Health insurance, the percentage is going up. But actually, health insurance, our budget lines are fluid, because when we do our budget, especially if we're doing our budget right now, we're taking our actuals and we're adding the percentage, whether it's the retirement or the general, and that's how we zero base it. We put a little bit of contingency in, but then open enrollment happens, people get off it, people come on it, and then the number looks like a giant savings like it did this past year. So some years you're over a little bit, some years you're under. You want that sweet spot, but that is something that we zero base. But oftentimes we're zero basing it well before the open enrollment, before we know exactly what happens. And then we also did do a 5-year projection of health insurance, and that is in the appendices, section D. External funding, which is on page 22, that is a chart that you've seen before. And that's just all of our external funding. And then our revolving.
Another thing they probably need to be educated on, even we do,
Sure.
is how this could change.
So one of the things.
I mean, let me just interrupt.
Yeah.
METCO is based on enrollment? Yes?
But there's been a lot of lobbying, which has gotten us additional funds even mid-year, sometimes the last couple of years.
Okay.
So yes, but it also has had some political response, both ways, honestly, but last few positively.
But I guess the big two are Chapter 70, Chapter 71.
Yeah.
And in a way, those are unpredictable. Usually what I like to do is just estimate based on the numbers that we currently have. So this year, we're expecting 2.8, so we estimated 2.8 for next year. It could be up, anywhere from 40 to 80,000, but you never know with potential 9C cuts or anything like that. They're still doing the Formula 2 for the Chapter 71. So I think 675 is a conservative number. It could go up a little bit, but right now, that's the information that we have. Federal grants are going down. We are not getting Title I funding right now. So that's one of the reasons for federal grants. And that's also something, I think last year, more money came in than anticipated. And we were just comfortable going into what we actually got in FY '21. And then miscellaneous revenue is just that, and rental of school facilities. The next section was,
Just a quick question.
please.
I mean, this is
why was the budget for interest earnings so high? And the reality seems to be
Yeah.
leveled at a different,
That happened in FY '21. That is what we were anticipating at the time, and we got the interest rates just went way down. Ian, I know you're there.
20,
Let me get you, I knew that because I was asked that before.
Yeah, 'cause I don't-
It's a,
I guess it depends on wherever you're interested, right?
right.
I'm like, I don't
And it
remember
wasn't
such
even
big-
close to what we had.
Right.
But if you looked at the actuals from, say, FY '20 and FY '19, it was close to that. And it's a
Okay.
simple answer.
Close to
and I
that
forget.
100,000?
Close to the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had to make up that
Last year.
difference in revenue. So that is the reason why we have that $573,000 end-of-year balance. That is for really three reasons. The first is putting back that $200,000 in stabilization money, replenishing the reserve to reduce portion for E&D that we use for the budget, and the last is to replenish any revenue that if our numbers didn't come in, if our revenue didn't meet our budget, that would either come out of E&D or be put into E&D if we got more revenue. So that's why we're expecting about 4.9%. If we got $100,000 in interest, we would be over that 5%. That makes sense? Good, good, good. Lastly was the kind of the fun section for me. The 5-year projections on the salaries, and what I'm calling the biggest budget drivers, and this is what they were interested in. The biggest budget drivers, and we're going to stress this to the two finance committees, is certainly going to be salary. Obviously, the CCTA salary is our biggest expense. Non-teacher salary, and then contract services, supplies, materials, equipment, hardware, software, and health insurance. They did not want these to be broken up into 15 to 20 different categories.
No.
In fact, they sort of, in a way, wanted salaries in one bucket, other expenses in another, maybe health insurance. But I thought it was really important to show, at least break out the CCTA. In addition, break out their longevity, so you're seeing what those longevity costs are. There are a few assumptions, starting with the CCTA. As you know, they're in the beginning of a 3-year contract. Their COLA is 2.5, 2.5, 2.75. For an assumption for the last 3 years of those projections, I use a 2.5 COLA. I also use that for non-teacher salaries as well. Another assumption was retirements, $50,000 savings in retirements. It could certainly be more. In fact, it may be. But I used $50,000 for that assumption, as well as a $10,000, $10,000 for longevity. So what we did as a team is we literally went through every single 156 FTEs. We didn't just take the number and add a percentage. This is, if there are no changes, this is accurate. There will certainly be lane changes. But if no one leaves, and this is the 156 staff members that we have, these numbers are going to be pretty close. And I knew that they would be between, the 3.5% and the 4%. You are seeing a jump the year that we do have a 2.75 COLA, and that's something that we can certainly plan for. Next, we have 88.14 FTEs, non-teachers. The assumption is this is based off FY22 budgeted. This is one that we weren't able to take everybody and roll it up. The reason for that is because our tutor positions, especially at CPS, but our tutor positions and some of those other positions, they're a bit more fluid than, say, teachers. So I feel very comfortable that these numbers, or at least the percentage increases, are going to hold. A lot of our tutors who are on steps, as well as our maintenance and secretaries, they're all on the max step. So that is why you're seeing really an FY '25, '26, and '27, assuming that there's no changes, a 2.5% increase, because everyone's already at top
Right.
step. Lastly, budgeted contract services, 6% for contract services. While that looks high, the bulk of this contract service, or at least half of it, is our special ed contract service with Case Collaborative. Transportation, sorry about that. Transportation. So I think that we've done a good job getting a handle on our other contract services, that we can maybe be neutral. But the Case Transportation, we do get 2 years' worth of sort of lead time. They tell us 2 years' worth of projections, but there was a credit more at the CPS side in FY '22, but there was a credit that we're not going to be getting in FY '23. So that's why we use the 6% increase. That has been pretty much the standard increase. And next year we'll zero base it again and see if that 6% holds. Supplies, materials, equipment, software, and hardware, I was comfortable saying a 2.5% increase. I know that we're going to really be taking a look at our supplies and materials. I was talking to Dr. Hunter before that. Software costs do go up every year. We're not adding more, but we have to take that into account if there are increases to software. And lastly, health insurance. That includes active and retiree. That is an overall 5.28% increase. It's a 5.5 average increase for active and a 6.5% for retiree.
Jared, do you have a page reference on that one?
Yes, that is on page 49.
Thank you.
And then lastly, we just incorporated the NESDEC report, but that is last year's, and we expect to get, we usually get these in January.
Yeah, next month or two.
Yeah, so that helps with some projections. I don't know how accurate they are.
I like to toggle between NESDEC and the actuals and try
I
to.
think with the housing market, and there's so
Yeah.
many weird things
There's-
going on right now,
correct.
just like, it's like, good luck.
And then right behind that is our October 1st enrollment.
Right, which is actually on your agenda in a minute.
So I welcome any questions, what you'd like to see more information on.
Well, I think they're going to have some big questions, especially when you see the CCTA salaries up between 4 and 3.5% every year.
Yep.
That's not in their book sustainable. So they're going to ask, how are we going to account for that in other areas of the budget?
Yep.
To me, that's the big piece of information in there. So I think,
Now, is that what we just concluded the negotiations on?
yes,
That's correct, yeah. And that's why we did it with, cautious optimism that we could manage this with a lot of work commencing now to.
tell me if
to
I'm
manage
wrong, that longevity did not change from the previous
It did not.
contract.
it. No.
So, but I think now we're sort of shining a light on it, and I think it's a good thing. Just from a process point of view, thinking forward to being in front of FinCom next Thursday, I think this is just too much toggling around to have a productive meeting, and I think we need to figure out a way to present this based on the memo they sent us. Sort of, I don't think people can honestly toggle between the report and
Sure.
this memo. I think it's just, I could be wrong, and correct
I
me.
think Jared's plan was to build
Yeah.
slides for
Yeah.
them.
It mirrors this.
And begin with the memo, but we can certainly follow their
it just feels a little awkward that we as a school committee won't be able to see those slides and discuss them before that FinCom meeting.
It would only have information you've already
Yeah.
seen. It would just be in a
Well,
package.
that
of-
is the important
so-
thing, right?
But we can forward that to
Presenting
you.
them.
That's not a problem.
This would be, all I'll be doing is taking screenshots of this. So this, I'll narrow it down to probably 15 slides. There are certain things that I don't think they're interested in, but there will be nothing new. There will really be no new narrative unless you ask me to provide that. And just quickly backing up to the salaries, and I do have an answer for that. Every single year, salaries go up, especially teacher salaries go up between, 3.5% and in districts that have staff that are not on top
Yes.
step, 6%.
Higher.
So a lot of our staff, I believe 66% of our teachers are on top step. So that number is already built in. So a lot of them are just getting COLA. So I feel that we will get creative on ways to sustain this, but I think it's been a battle every year in every district to keep up with teacher salaries.
But I don't think any district around us has this longevity package. Right?
Correct, but I agree, but the longevity is built in. It is already in the budget, so the
No, I understand that,
increase-
but
yeah.
that, it adds to our increases
Sure,
every year.
sure.
So our increases are high, probably the highest in the state.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be honest about that with the FinCom and with ourselves. And eventually it might impact other parts of our budget.
Certainly.
To assume otherwise, I think would be to ask for trouble. I think we knew this during the negotiations, that
Yep.
we were in a very, very tough spot.
Yep.
And that tough spot was going to be felt by the town.
Towns.
Towns.
Yeah.
Speaking of towns, has this been sent to the Concord FinCom?
It has not.
No, we
Okay.
wanted you to see it first.
All right. And as a courtesy, would it go to Carlisle as well?
Certainly.
All right. So
We
just
meet with Carlisle the 27th, so it's not that
Yep.
far away.
minor typo, second paragraph, you want the word kept in balance.
Thank you.
Pretty minor. Overall, I'm pleased with the memo. Don't like digesting it on the fly
Yeah.
here, but that's an old refrain. But I think it does a good job of addressing what they want. I am personally in favor of more narrative as well, because I can't take you home with PDF slides, but I can take your narrative home.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And the narrative is really a way of saying, we're confident, here's our story, or to use their words, here's our perspective. They said multiple times, we want your perspective. I think we should give them our perspective, and we do have a perspective. And I don't want to be too bashful about it, and I think slides are like water. They slide right through your hands sometimes without the author there to present. So I think a little bit of narrative work would be in our best interest.
You got it.
But so Jared, they'll get the memo,
Mhm.
they'll get the backup, and then they'll get a presentation.
Yeah.
And what you're suggesting is maybe a little bit more narrative in the memo where it's all language-based anyway.
And it really looks directly at their big
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, exactly.
I could, if you'd like, what I can do is I can send this one off and call it version 1, and then have a second memo that just builds on this and call it version 2.
Because I think you need to describe the salaries, what longevity is,
Mhm.
because a lot of people aren't going to know. So instead of having to have everybody have that question, describe what it is.
Sure.
I say, put the current longevity, levels in there. I want to be honest about it for both districts. And, make it clear that these contracts end in FY '24, right?
Yep.
If this is tough for the FinCom to deal with, let's make it as easy as possible with really direct information.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Sarah.
No, I'm just looking at that they want the 5-year projections on spending under current service levels as detailed in the expenditure growth model. What do they expect you to produce in response to that? Because I don't see anything that looks like an expenditure growth model.
Yeah, so I think what we did is I know that's what they're looking for.
Okay.
They're looking for, what is your biggest budget drivers? What are you projecting for them? 5 years worth of projections, and what can you project? Such as the enrollment. How will that impact? How will that impact spending? It will impact assessments. I don't think right now it's going to necessarily impact
Staffing.
staffing. So there's really no fiscal impact to that. Other things that we can certainly, they wanted to see budget versus actuals and very large deltas.
Yep.
And, the only ones that were over the 10% was something that we could really easily explain.
Yep. No, I get that. I'm wondering, are they expecting to see everything rolled together into a 5-year projection of a budget? Is that what they're
No.
That
looking
was not
for?
our understanding
No.
from our
So-
conversations with them.
Okay, so they
When-
just want those buckets?
Yeah.
They want to say, target in on some of your big
Buckets.
drivers and
Yep.
show us what happens in those
Yeah.
buckets?
That's
Okay.
what we understand.
When I met with them, I made that very clear, because my first understanding was, okay, you have a $10 million budget. What are your, take everything and make it equal $10 million, and then roll everything up, so each year you're going up 3.7, 5.4, that's high. But that is not what they want. They want big buckets. And also what's included in these is other funding sources. For salaries, we have salaries in other funding sources. Those are included in here. We have, obviously, tuitions, those are also in different funding sources. So,
Yeah, my understanding with 2 conversations with the guideline chair that we had was they want to be at a high level of how they need to be thinking forward based on what needs we're projecting, whatever way that's going to play out, and just start to see what's coming for the entire town. Obviously, we're one of many departments that they're accountable for. The town's actually going in this week, so that was my takeaway, big buckets.
Yep, and I think the biggest bucket is our salaries.
Of course.
So I think that kind of needs to be the lead and not
question.
the last thing.
Yeah.
So we might try to reverse this a little bit and,
Yeah, at this point, we were using their order
Yeah.
on the memo, which I already said to Jared, like, it feels backwards, because the big ones are at the bottom instead of the top.
Yeah.
So if you're in agreement, we'll probably flip that around. And we're going to talk with Parashar at least a couple times here before Thursday.
Well, I think the salaries matches nicely their lead-off top strategic issues. That is a top strategic issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and if you could just keep us in the loop as to what,
Yeah.
if you're going to change this, so
Definitely.
that we
No,
know.
you'll see everything before they get any revision.
And we had talked this summer about having a narrative as kind of how we ended up on longevity and where contracts have come, and were we gonna do that as a school committee, to have our own narrative of like?
This is our work.
No, but
But
we
no, but
talked
we
about
talked about
memorializing
memorializing, yeah.
in like a memo of some kind, the people who were involved in that negotiation, sort of memorializing like how it was iterated,
Yeah.
how we arrived there, just because it was so unique. We did talk about that this summer.
We talked about it, we didn't do it.
Yeah.
We can do it, we have voluminous notes. And to this very point, during negotiations, it's not uncommon to dig back 5 and 10 years, looking for history.
No, I get your point, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just thinking like,
Behind
are your notes like in a lovely notebook in your room and
No.
they go away with you? Your voluminous notes? I think that was the point, like just
You want something in the archive?
Yeah, that would be great, don't you think?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah.
during the.
I wish we had them this year.
Right.
Yes,
It's not
right,
only for
right.
Some of
though,
us,
to
I
add
can
some
say,
of that
was to
into
understand.
this,
Yeah.
of like, what is longevity, how did we get here, and, because I think
Yeah.
that is really,
And I don't think we ever answered that question of
And-
when the longevity piece started.
Right, because that, I think that's how this was, this conversation iterated,
We're
because
like,
there were
we're-
big
and
and as
gaps
a
in
newcomer
knowledge.
coming in, I just feel like I want
Especially
all of
at
that
CPS.
background, and it might be helpful for the,
But
for
we at least
FinCom
should
to
put
understand
in
that.
our, in our financial documents, what I don't even know, are the contracts posted?
Right.
on the
But to
website?
your point,
The
Nair,
ones
is
that are
like,
finalized.
We're
But
waiting,
the
It was still-
CCTA
I get,
we're waiting for MTA to help us finish that.
Okay.
but
So
to your
th-
point too, there's
Because they're
something,
not, and nobody has access to this publicly, which they should, I think we need to just put a little chart of what longevity is for CCTA now, whatever.
but I think too, to your
4 or
point, the
5, 6.
narrative is sometimes as important as
Yes.
the data. You know what I'm saying? And I
Yep.
think in that instance, for future people having to negotiate, it would be so helpful.
Yep,
And
Agreed.
for clarification, the next time our negotiations will be happening for CCTA is the 24th. When is the next time? What's the
2024.
2024.
24?
yeah, so the contract's up in FY '24.
24.
it'll begin like at the end of '23 or something?
23 or
Into the
24.
spring, right,
And
of 24?
Concord
End of
Town,
24.
End of '24.
Yeah.
and how is Concord Town negotiations?
Same.
Same, so
Right
they are
now.
aligned together?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
they're head in head, okay. So similar cycle and similar conversations, thank you.
For the background data, I didn't see the COVID-related inflows in the nice table we had seen before. I'm seeing the total amount of inflow.
Uh-huh.
Did I miss it? Was it right there looking at
I
me?
don't know. I thought everything, so we had,
I could well have missed it.
we had the categories and the amounts, and then we had the pie chart, that's not a pie chart, the wheel, that's it. And then we had the budget status of what was expended.
Right, but was there a table that listed the different grants and the
Yeah.
years?
Yep,
That's here?
it's on page 10.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, appreciate it. There we go, okay. Thank you. I was dazzled by the pie chart, I guess.
That is a colorblind's nightmare. Me. I had nothing to do with the colors.
So, to the chairs, as well as to Jared, how can the rest of us be of service getting this to FinComs? You don't need to answer that now, but just know that we'll do what you want.
You're thinking?
I'm thinking, I think just having some sets, as always, like having sets of eyes on it and saying, what is something that if I was not on school committee would be something I don't understand, or I don't understand the relationship of things in relation to one another, right? I mean, I know you can't explain all of like chapter 70 to them,
Yeah.
right? That's
No,
not,
no.
that's not going to happen, but
No.
there is stuff that, for example, stuff that you had potentially flagged as being a bucket that upon consideration didn't make sense to be in a specific bucket because the information isn't useful. It's just not, it's not dependable enough to be of use to anybody, right? At least signaling that, identifying what it is that is, what are the knowables and what are the ones that fluctuate.
Yep.
I don't know if for something like for sped tuitions, if having, if you just say, like, if you look over the past couple of years, sometimes it's a plus 300K, sometimes it's
Yep.
it's,
Yeah. In other
you can throw a dart and pick a number, but it's not necessarily going to mean anything.
It's not
Because
useful,
every year is different,
Yep.
right?
In some years, we prepay.
Yeah.
Usually, the region is able to prepay. CPS, I think 2 years ago, we were not able to prepay. Also, something to keep in mind, when circuit breaker reimbursement goes down, that's actually a good thing, because that means your tuitions are going down.
Right, yeah, understood.
So,
But that's something you need to
yeah. So
explain.
if you,
Circuit breaker is always confusing.
Yeah.
But it may
People,
result in
right?
our in-house programs going up,
correct.
so.
And one thing
it's
we
that
were
challenge.
talking about, if you remember, I think it was last year, I did give, not to say I want to necessarily do it again, but I did give a recorded tutorial. Basically, we called it like Budget 101. And I gave it to all of the select board members, I gave it to the school committee members, and I gave it to the FinCom members. So I can see if I can dig that back out, and at least, I know we're meeting tomorrow.
Yes, but
I just give like a, you
Yeah.
know, what does general fund mean?
Yep.
You know, explain circuit breaker, explain chapter 71.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did in the presentation is I gave hyperlinks to everything, and you could, you
Mm-hmm.
know, get lost in it. So I'll dig that up, I'll try and
That
find the
would be great,
video, and I'll
yeah.
send it over to you guys.
Yeah, and we just have to remember that this is, the October is our initial, this is
Yep.
where we're making sure that we are providing them with.
Preliminary.
With preliminary, and in the way that they want, like, that it's helpful to them, right? That it's meaningful to us. and
Because we're not
also-
going to pick through the budget at this meeting.
No.
Because, I mean, we don't have it. We're not asked, we would, you know, we're not supposed to.
And we don't want to get on the weeds
No,
of things.
so that's exactly it, yep.
Well, and to their credit, they know that's not their.
Yes, no, absolutely, yeah.
Their zone.
And we've had such a respectful relationship with them now that I feel like we go in and it's a dialogue throughout the whole thing, so that's what I'm expecting, again, obviously coming out with all this updated information, but I'm sure it'll be that same really positive conversational learning tone that we've had.
So narrative and slides, we would see 48 or 72 hours prior?
Yeah, that, if you could give me the weekend, only because that's when I can just, a lot of times I can't do work here, I have to either do it at home or weekends.
We understand.
Yeah, so, yeah, that would be great.
I'd like to break well, I'll speak for you without asking you, but I'd like to break those apart, because I think the narrative and the budget book with the numbers should go as a package to the finance committee, and I think we'd like to get that to them ahead of the slides I think we would bring. We haven't, in my past, brought slides to them ahead of the meeting.
Right. And the slides,
think
if
we
they
could do
do
it
their
in two
homework,
parts.
won't be any surprise.
No surprises at all. In fact, I just want to say out loud, we didn't bring you slides tonight because the feedback I thought I heard at the workshop and otherwise was you're kind of PowerPointed, on an overload of PowerPoint. So if you want to see slides on certain topics and not others, help us know what's useful.
You would say a lot of
I thought-
slides in the budget, in my budget presentation.
In the
That's-
full one,
Yeah.
probably, yeah.
So we're going to see a new memo
Revised
Monday
memo,
morning?
yep.
Because their packet, I think you might check with them, I think they upload it Friday.
Okay.
But maybe not, it could be Tuesday. Tuesday, I
I
think
think
they
it's
get.
Tuesday, because
Yes.
I was looking at their webpage over the weekend.
So I can send them, if you're comfortable with this, if you want to, I think their meeting is Thursday, so they ask for it at least a week in advance. So I can, if we have any more questions in the next 24 to 48 hours in the book itself, let me know and we can make any revisions, and then I can try and get that to them by Thursday, so they have the book accompanied by memo 1, which I can even, technically this is already public information, I can send version 1 to them even tonight or tomorrow.
I think we need to have the narrative in the book.
Yeah, let's revise tomorrow.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, because if we
Okay,
have
in the
stuff
book.
spread everywhere, then
Yeah, we'll
we're
get it
going to
all
lose track.
tidied up and
Yeah.
packaged.
So, all right,
Okay,
good?
yeah, I
Okay.
think so. Okay.
All right,
So October
enrollments.
1 enrollments.
I think we can just look at this really quickly. If you look at the high school numbers, we're up 6 students from a year ago this time. Stable, like we said earlier, and the rest is mostly CPS, so we'll just hone in on that for now.
Were those numbers shifted at CPS due to just like some redistricting stuff?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk on that when we get to Concord if you
Oh,
want,
sorry.
rather than,
We don't
yeah.
have it on our agenda, so I just want to be sure.
It doesn't matter, it was just a quick.
You
Do
don't
you want,
skip it.
what's
No,
your
no, no.
preference? Do you want me
No,
to do
no,
it
no, we
now?
can do it then.
It is. There was
That's what I thought.
intentional,
Okay, yeah.
intentional shifts at elementaries that we're
Yeah, yeah.
watching now to see if we got to do it again.
But we can do
yes,
it.
Yes.
I just don't want to skip it. Good?
Short answer is yes, Alexa.
Okay.
ESER 3.
That's, I don't think there's much to.
All right.
Yep.
Want to
ESER
hop in?
3?
Sure. So in the memo, we updated this for you to tell you what we've put into the application. It is just that, so that we could get our placeholders in with the state for the funds. Our recommendation right now, coming out of the surveys and the needs assessments and the intent of the grant, is twofold. And this is a grant where you don't have to allocate annual, per year at this point. It's a big bucket of money over the coming years, so it's not broken out as to what we would do each year. I can talk a little on what we're thinking. A portion of summer school for the rising ninth graders is eligible to be funded through this. And that could be 15,000 or a little more over year, but we've allocated 15 for right now. And we did add, as Kristen mentioned, the certified reading specialist. That was a summer addition that we brought to you that we had thought would come out of contingency funds. And now we've got other options to apply it towards this grant. So what it will do is offset the increase to the FY '23 and beyond budget. We can phase that cost in however you'd like. Jared and
What's the annual cost for the reading specialist?
it's a full FTE salary of a veteran teacher. So,
So it's not just summer?
no,
Okay.
no. That's at the, that's
I
at the
got
high
you now,
school.
okay.
Yep.
The summer
So-
part messed me up.
So the
Okay.
cost over 3 years is more than what number you see there, but this can be a portion of it. You know, and you'll hear me say this every time we talk ESSER, just like Jared has, and I know you agree. We don't want to create this big jump we've got to find later. So this is actually a nice way to slowly roll that new position in and not have a big one full FTE to accommodate for. So we can talk more as we get into the actual budget build as to how much you want FY '23 to factor these numbers in.
Yep.
But that's what we're planning.
Okay.
Okay. And then, where are we?
MASC
Oh, yeah,
resolutions.
your MASC stuff.
So I think we just wanted to sort of have an original first discussion, have people look at the resolutions. There are a lot of them, and I could be speaking incorrectly, but I don't think any of them would, I mean, some of them would be helpful to us, and I would probably support some of them, but I don't know if we as a committee need to vote, but please go through them, and if you feel that strongly about voting about one of them. So basically, asking the members of our school committee who attend virtually the conference, sort of binding, I guess, a vote, so that's another issue, because the problem is,
Do they vote on the, I forget, I remember, do they vote on the whole slate at once
No.
or individual?
individual.
I think they go through and they see if there are any objections or modifications to anything.
Yeah.
First.
And they'll, whatever, they put some on the table
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
The only
Who went,
problem,
like, you went last year, right?
I was there.
Oh, it was you, okay. Like, is there robust discussion and
Yes,
debate for
yes.
each of these?
Yes, not each.
I remember last
some
year
of them.
seemed more controversial.
The
These seem
MCAS.
more mundane. Maybe
You
not
just never know.
MCAS, but
So the
okay.
only problem with us having a vote as a committee to bind a committee person's vote is then you cannot listen to the debate and make a decision on your own, which really doesn't make sense to me. If there was something that was so very important to our district that, you know, we felt like it was a huge win and we might be, go through them. I haven't seen anything. I mean, some of them sound great, you know, electric buses and so forth, but So we don't need to decide tonight. We'll have another meeting before the conference, so we could do this offline, but just sort of.
Okay.
And you cannot attend well, there's a long waiting list I read, but you
I
can
had
attend virtually.
One question, do we have any, I mean, we talk about in our district, zero tolerance attitudes here towards bullying and such. And this resolution 5 on this seemed to not be quite aligning with sort of what we perceive as zero
It's-
tolerance, but,
So it's zero tolerance saying we don't want, in terms of discipline,
what?
discipline.
Yeah, but, right, so again, like, we're using that jargon, but this is
This is another way of
separate and
looking.
apart.
Yes.
Do we apply any zero tolerance-based discipline?
You know, zero tolerance has a lot of different meanings in
Right.
different contexts. Generally, the impression you're giving is that you're not going to allow that to happen. In some settings, however, zero tolerance means you're also going to have some swift, pretty harsh
Consequence.
punishment.
Yeah.
We tend to be on the side of, we're not going to let things happen, and we're going to address them, but the punishment will fit whatever is happening
Yeah.
in the context of it. Zero tolerance often is set, pre-established, context doesn't matter, you did that,
Got it.
you're out,
Okay.
Yeah.
that sort of
Just
thing.
wanted to make sure
It's a
that what we're
philosophical
doing here is a little
nuance, for sure.
differentiated from what
Yeah.
they're speaking about.
It's sort of in line with what they're being, because they say you should encourage the use of restorative,
Yes.
therapeutic, and educational approaches to incidents whenever possible, over the use of a quote-unquote zero tolerance
Correct.
policy that just penalizes a
No,
student.
I get it, but I mean, again, like, I remember, like, you know, when we've had issues with race.
Right.
You know, we had an incident last year, and there were consequences
Yeah.
doled out. Is that part of this umbrella of zero tolerance? And I just wondered, are there negative consequences to say?
I'd have to go look at these bills, but my
Yeah.
hunch is they're very
Yeah.
targeted to
Anyway.
disproportionate punishments
I-
being,
Yeah, no, I get the spirit of what
Yeah.
they're saying. I just didn't know if there could be unintended consequences.
no, I see
to-
the term, the
Yeah,
words.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
That's all.
Yeah.
I had a question about the idea of full funding act. How would that, if that would really positively impact our district, and if it would make how big of an impact it would make for us? Because we just spoke about special education services, and we talked. You have mentioned a reading instructor. And this is definitely an area that is underpaid.
Is this
To
federal?
districts.
That's
This is-
federal, right?
Right, so that's a heavy, I mean, it's good to vote for it,
Yeah.
but the lobbying power of the MASC is
Right.
probably not up to the task of, it's a good, again, I think we would all say, yeah, that sounds like a great
Yeah,
idea.
Of course.
A lot of these things, if they really happened, would be great financial and educational support, but, some of these are local, state legislation, and some of these are federal issues, so.
Right.
Are any of these MASC brought pushes, do they spread, do they work in terms of like spreading the word around communities to understand do they help people understand, parents and community members understand the impact or the actual problems, like for example that funding issue, the idea,
I'll let others weigh in. My sense is it's educating your legislators.
Yes.
More than your community.
And they do have some, some money and some people to lobby and work with state reps, the state senators.
Right.
I don't know how much, I think that they would depend on the national teachers associations to do that work at a federal level.
federal, yeah.
Yeah.
But there are some, there have been some that the local school boards adopt that shines a light on a particular
Oh, no,
issue.
question.
Yeah,
to
I
the
was meaning more
community.
just in this
Yeah,
format.
no, in
Yeah,
general,
but
it's
yeah.
more on the legislative
Right.
side, but it can be a kind of a PR within the
Yes.
community as well.
Sort of how you use it is
It's
up to
yeah,
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I personally don't see any of these that I would say, oh, I think we really need to adopt this as something, or that we need
Yeah.
to, there've been some things that they've proposed.
Mhm.
Right,
Yep,
especially being from like June of 2020, they had some very strongly pointed resolutions that a lot of school boards just took them upon themselves to really sign their names to, rather than just voting in a.
Yeah, that's true.
all right.
Thank you. Okay. Do we know who's planning to go to this? That was something we wanted.
I have to look at my calendar. Remind me of the dates.
Is it November 7 and 8, something like that?
Sounds right, I don't have it.
6 and 7? Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday? It's Saturday, Sunday, right?
Yes.
So it's 6.
And the only problem is, I think that town of Concord training is the 7th, no?
Yep.
But there's also sessions, so
Yeah.
I don't know, I'd have to go look.
We also have the middle school meeting on Friday, the building committee.
I think this is Saturday, Sunday, maybe with the Friday night portion? I'd have to go look at the schedule, honestly. We'll do that outside the meeting. So we'll figure out to see if we can spread the wealth.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. That's the good thing about the remote
Yes,
participation.
exactly.
Right.
Additional public comment?
Additional
Anyone
public
ask?
comments. We do have some new people who have joined us since we started, so we'll give people a chance to bring forward any public comments.
Let's
Yep.
see.
Hi,
Ms.
Terry
Ackerman,
Ackerman.
yes.
Good evening. Just to answer your question from a minute ago, November 6th, the day of the committee and board training session.
Okay, that's Saturday, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I sent around the email from the clerk to our committee, so they're all aware of the time. We're waiting for the location, right? But we'll find out soon. Yeah,
I think it might be by Zoom.
okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So the MSASC is November 3rd to the 6th.
Oh,
That's what I thought.
So it's Wednesday to Saturday.
It's a lot of
So yeah,
weekday
it's a lot
stuff.
of, a lot of stuff.
okay, we'll have to look at the
Yeah,
agenda
yeah.
and figure out if we
But
can.
I thought the weekend was more high-level governance stuff, and the workshop-y stuff was earlier.
During the week.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So Saturday's probably when they vote on the
Yeah, I think so.
resolutions. Okay,
all right.
okay, great. Hi, Mr. Bozak.
Good evening, members of the school committee. Good evening. Just a quick comment, if I could. I just wanted to comment on Mr. Stanton's presentation. I'm a numbers guy, so I really enjoyed it. But I wanted to go a little further and just say that I've been here for 37 years, 32 as a union leader, and I've never worked with a better finance director than Mr. Stanton. It goes back to the COVID, how everything was planned out and the protocols that were put in place. We were probably the only district that really went through everything. Protocols for everything, and we still have all those in place now. Again, I think Mr. Stanton is a great asset to this school district. He meets with us regularly. Every building supervisor meets with him, and he wants to know what's going on. And it's just a good relationship we have with him. And I can be brutally honest with him. He can be brutally honest with me. That takes trust, and there's a lot of trust. So I thank Mr. Stanton publicly for his presentation, and I'm just so blessed working with him, kind of like on a daily basis. And so I think we're very fortunate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Smile under the mask.
Okay, do we have any other public comments? More like that are great.
Yes.
We have other administrators here.
Share the love.
All right, thank you. So I think then at this point, we can adjourn the
Absolutely.
national meeting.
Yep.
Yep, okay, great.
We just need a motion.
Move to adjourn the Concord-Carlisle School Committee meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And
Good evening to our Carlilians.
good night.
All right.
All right.
Is everybody, can we move forward? Nobody needs a break?
I say quick break.
You say quick break?
Quick break.
Okay.
Like 2 minutes.
I have 8:37. We'll give you till 8:42.
Thank you.
Here's the CPS.
So I'll call the Concord School Committee back into session. Move up to my mic here. And we will start with the CPS fall budget updates.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I won't say too many of the same things again. We're obviously looking at preliminary numbers. There were more swings and unpredictabilities at CPS. I think probably natural given the greater scale and scope of everything. So we're happy to talk through anything that jumped out at you. There are some numbers that might. In terms of preparation for the Finance Committee, you have a memo from Jared, similar structure, so we can take some of the feedback you already gave us and know we probably want to expand on some of the narratives, but we want to hear other topics and feedbacks that you think are important to the pre-K to 8 population. And talk through any of the numbers that, really were drivers last year and any ones we predict going forward. It's a really interesting budget to look at because a lot of the drivers of last year with leave of absences and some of those anomalies, truly COVID-based, aren't going to inform the budget going forward. So we're having to really peel layers back and analyze what happened and what it means for FY23 and even as we built FY22 and where we are now. So why don't I turn it over to you from there?
So, again, very similar report, but there are some differences. Starting with this report, in the CPS budget is budgeted by location. So we have 8 locations. High school is obviously one location. So the way that we do the zero-based budget at the high school is we do it by program. We have 40 or so programs. At CPS, we do it by school and then program in the school or program in the location. We don't have health insurance that we budget for. Obviously, OPEB, debt, health insurance. 80% of our budget is salaries, give or take. It might even be a little bit more. So that is the real concentration. The COVID impact at CPS, because there's more staff, I felt was much more unpredictable. But what we did do, we added a little bit more narrative in each location because of the swings, especially in the 2000 series on the DESE report on page 4. Even though it's under the 10%, over $1 million, what's looking like a savings in the 2000 series, there's a lot more to what happened there in that story. So what we did do is in each location where there was a swing, we tried to state what that narrative was and trying to paint that picture a little bit.
Can I just say, a
Please.
common theme that you'll see across most of the schools is that the teacher line looks like it had a balance, but if you get to the substitute line, you'll see we went negative because the teacher maybe took an unpaid leave or something happened, they didn't return, and not everybody we budgeted for, but we had to hire a long-term sub. So it doesn't quite equal out because often those subs are less expensive, but that's part of the ebbs and flows that are here for sure.
So one of the lines, in the 1000 series, the only function that technically went over that 10% one way or the other was the programs with other districts. The real reason for that was the prepays. The prepays put it over. So that was the reason for the $320,000 overage in the general fund. Next, so the spending levels, similar to the high school. At this time, we do not anticipate any programs or services where spending levels plan to change. But when I get to salaries, especially the CTA, with, the longevities might jump out at you, but we do have planned offsets with early retirement and sick leave that are going to help us absorb some of these additional costs in the next 3 years. Next is the capital plan. The narrative of the capital plan, and I'm jumping a little bit all over the place here. The narrative on the capital plan is on page 31, but in our appendices is the full 5-year capital plan, and that's Appendix D.
And I think, if I don't have it in front of me, but my remembrance is that the capital plan has a lot of Ripley work in it.
It does.
And I think we're going to need some narrative as to how Carlisle pays for that. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's still 40K or something like that,
Yeah,
if I look
it's
at
about
that first.
10% of.
So how does that
what it would
work?
be. It would, yeah, I'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because do they need a little town meeting motion to do that small amount of money for us?
I don't think so, but we'll do all the
Yeah.
homework to be sure.
Is that listed under elementary? Because I'm just looking
No,
down.
Ripley.
But it doesn't, I don't
Oh,
see.
You have
no,
to keep
the
going.
capital plan?
Yeah,
It's in the capital plan, so it's in the back. And
okay.
and we
I
do
don't
it
see
by
it.
location, so you'll see,
Oh,
it's the
there it is.
last
Okay,
page.
sorry.
Yeah,
It's the last page, yeah.
64.
Right at the bottom.
So I don't know if you want me to go into the locations, but in each location, where there was a variance that definitely needed some narrative, such as even starting with the preschool, which is on page 9, a couple of things that do jump out. First is the assistants and tutors. It looks like we're showing a savings of $124,000. The reason for that is they were,
We collapsed a classroom
Class.
last year because we didn't have the as many regular education students here, and we didn't need the staffing here, which then when other needs came up at other buildings, we moved them over.
so I put a little narrative under each one where there was a swing. You know,
Are we still on the district-wide, that page 11, district-wide? Or did,
I can go there. District-wide,
Okay,
so
okay.
that's district-wide elementary.
Yep, got it.
So just a couple, so when it comes to tuitions, so our tuitions are the 9,000 series. When we put in the budget, I budgeted in the district-wide location. Sometimes when Ian implements it, and there's no error here, people are very used to the other location and the other account number. So when you see a special ed tuition, a $600,000 negative here, it's just a transfer out into the regular it's just accounting. And you would, but I didn't catch it fast enough last summer because they already started using that line, and there were a number of encumbrances and expenses against it, and for me to make them journal entry, all of that, and other things, it would have been a nightmare. So that's simply what it is, and you might even see that in FY '22s as well. We're still reporting it the same way. And then, again, I go through all of the elementary schools. You can see some narrative as to, reasons for contract services being higher or lower, teacher savings or overtures, reasons for, whether it's, unpaid leaves or intermittent leaves or year-long leaves, or we did not fill the music teacher line. That was a big savings in 2 schools. And that is a big reason for a lot of the surplus in the 2000 series.
Boy, are we glad we aren't doing that anymore.
The middle school, again, had some swings. You see the tuitions were also in there, budgeted back out, or transferred back out into the district-wide line. And that is the big reason for the difference. And then I think we were looking at the teachers at the high school. So the teachers, this is kind of crazy. We budgeted 7.4 million. And our actual difference, we budgeted 7.437 million, and our delta was only $1,295. And that is luck. We zero-based it and everything, but that's just how it came out. And then district-wide in Ripley, that is some narrative there. I tried to catch everything that kind of stood out. Next is COVID, which is on page 23, very similar to the regions. We expended $987,000 in COVID, but we only, of that amount, $467,000 was the ESSER 1, and then the town gave us an additional $126,000 that we used for the laptops. So therefore, we did have about $392,000 in general fund expenses that we transferred over at the end of in the springtime, because we wanted to make sure that we could carry as many of these grants over into future years. Next is the special ed tuitions. This is just the actuals, FY20 and FY21. Transportation, we provide an update of our fleet. Collective bargaining, as you know, we have 5 bargaining units at CPS. The school committee negotiated successfully with 7 between the 2 districts last year.
Can I bring them back to enrollment since we skipped over that in the general agenda item?
Yes.
Is that all right if we do that for a minute
Please.
now?
Yeah.
Because it does have financial impact. This is something we're watching really closely. Alexa's right to have spotted some different things happening there than were happening before. 2 years ago, I have to double check which year we did it and which year it implemented. We made some shifts so that the Muse is now going to Willard if new families move in. The others are still at Alcott, 2 years, right? Yep. The other shift we made, and this happened because at the time we had the discussion, we had a 70-student swing between Willard and Alcott. And we knew, that we could not leave that the way it was. So now we're watching carefully because we did 2 things, the Muse, and we had all staff enroll their kids at Willard unless they already had a sibling in district at Alcott. COVID brought more staff children to the district than we normally would have seen. So we took that 70-student swing and have turned it about 100 kids in 2 years. So we've got to keep a close eye on that. You'll see Alcott's now at 399. Enrollment's down in all the elementary schools, which is what was predicted, and that's worth noting for all other reasons in a minute. So Alcott's at 399, Thoreau at 435, and Willard at 426. So that, not bad, but we definitely have to keep an eye on it. So you won't be surprised, I don't think, to hear a recommendation from me to probably the staff students, look at where we're going to place them. But I'm a little hesitant to do anything right now while we let the COVID dust settle. That's livable the way it is.
Do kids that live at the Muse, which I've learned is now called the Prescott?
Yeah, thank you.
So that we
Yes.
all,
Yes.
Yep.
So this neighborhood essentially has been, at this point, I think, since its development, been districted to all 3 of the
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah.
So so let's say the kids that landed first at Alcott, do they all stay there?
Oh,
or-
they stay. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we let them
Keep
stay. and-
siblings together.
Okay.
And siblings are
So now
together.
you've got sort of buses going to one neighborhood that fall out to 3 different schools?
They go to 2. There are no.
Okay, so
no
we're
more
out
There's nobody to
Thoreau.
throw. Yeah. that's
Okay,
fine.
Yeah.
so the Thoreau part is
Yeah.
over.
But
'Cause
it's
they were
so
there.
much closer to Willard.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's a much better.
That drive across
Yeah, yeah, of
town,
course.
yeah.
Do you see any need for like redistricting in a grander scale?
So you saw me use the levers that feel less significant.
Right.
Redistricting
Just because that,
in a grander scale is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I've lived some really bad difficult times in other districts and my home district over this topic. So it's not hundreds of kids
Yeah.
different. It's
I just didn't know.
dozens at worst. I think the staff piece is really interesting because that's not got anything to do with geography. That's
Sure.
completely up to us where we
Yeah.
think the numbers should go. I'm curious to see the patterns as COVID slows and if the numbers stay as high as they did.
Yep.
And
So-
just out of curiosity, staff kids, if you, say you're an Alcott teacher and your child does not go to Alcott with you, now, could that be an option for them if the enrollment was low and they had the option to be at,
Could be,
yeah?
it could be.
To add
I
hoc
can-
then.
Right, because I think it does become a
Yep.
challenge sometimes.
Yeah, it does.
If you've got young children
Yep.
and you're trying to get to your job,
Yep, it could be.
but you have to do daycare in the morning
Yep.
before you do that.
Yep, absolutely could be.
Now,
So,
what-
more to
so-
come.
So kindergarten and first grade really stand out.
Yes.
I do see that we had a bump from kindergarten to first grade. That could happen, I guess, again next year.
It could. It was a bit of a bump. We actually wondered if it was going to be more. So we're watching all these numbers. The census, it is lining up with what we're getting. If you look at the live births 5 years prior, the decline is there in terms of a slower
Yep.
pace into K and 1. It fits the NASDAQ projections of smaller schools. So I think a lot of what was anticipated is happening. We're definitely down a few sections, as you can see, and that will probably happen again in this year's budget.
Maintaining
as these
those or
smaller
further
grade levels
decrease?
move up.
Because if I add up kindergarten first and second, it's like 588.
Right.
So I'm just thinking about the middle school.
No,
That's
no
all.
question.
You know.
And all of this was factored in to the middle school. It actually lets me feel good.
I thought we were
that
building it for 700.
we are with a expected 650 and
Okay.
a swing of 50 for
Okay.
those who might come back from private, et cetera.
No, I know.
So-
This is definitely, I just think, for a couple of years, we're going to have to watch this trend. It could, we
Yes.
could bump back up to 220, for first grade next year or something, or second grade. But I was expecting more kids to come in first grade, honestly.
Do people,
Yeah, we didn't have
Or
big
more
holdouts.
kids, or kindergarten,
Yeah.
because like Harvard has a huge kindergarten, I'm not sure
Yeah.
why. Yeah.
and do we see any other heavy entry points, like at other sort of grade levels? Like, do we see,
Departures or entries?
no,
both, right?
influx? Like, I'm just thinking, when I think, for example, of home values, it's really hard to move here
Yeah.
when you're 37 with little kids. It's not the
We can
town
bring you,
even
we can
that I
bring you the
moved back
data,
to.
say from this summer,
know,
as to where the grade
I'm
levels
just wondering, are
were.
people moving here later, and do we see that reflected in
Some.
influx of kids in older grades?
Yeah, there's definitely young families finding access.
Oh, no, I
points.
get it. I mean,
So,
they're
yeah, we can bring you the
lucky to
data
have-
to, I don't want to
I
guess.
just didn't know if you had seen, we're seeing declines in enrollment in these younger grades, but increases in upper grades, and could that be a cause? I don't know, it
Yeah,
crossed my mind.
no, we can, I think the summer data is a good piece to
Yeah.
bring you, so you can see where kids, what age groups were
Right.
moving in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
thank you. So back to, yep.
Next is the external funding on page 33. This is just a little bit of an update of what you received back in the springtime, as well as the revolving gift and other balances. And this is just the beginning balances and the ending balances. Right, and then, okay, so if we go to the Appendix C, that is the 5-year projections. Again, budget drivers are the same, except for health insurance here, salaries for teachers and non-teacher salaries, and then contract services, supplies, materials, and equipment. So the one that jumps off the page is, I'm trying to get it here, is the contract services. The reason for that, and I'm on page, just so you all know, I'm on page 63.
Yep.
That first year for FY '23's assessment for Case Collaborative, I'm expecting a larger increase, and that is due to a credit that we did receive. And then I go to the 6%. So we will be getting those numbers very soon, I'm being told. But I'm just anticipating this. I'm expecting potentially a $200,000 increase. I could be just making that up, but looking back to the FY '20 numbers and what we received prior to that, and then the break that we got for FY '22's budget, it could be a relatively large increase.
It's a complicated formula
Yeah.
based on who's actually in the seats 2 years ago. We can do a whole presentation on that. So we do need to check in with them. It's going to be really interesting because ridership varied so much through COVID, and the formula is based on our percentage of total ridership. So that's got me already wanting to go talk to them and, as chair of the board, to go talk to them and ask how that's going to play out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not sure we should put it in a bucket, but I do think we have to put it into the narrative that we have a commitment to reduce the middle school, to cut out 500 and whatever it is, K, in the operating budget, starting FY '25, if things stay on the same track. Is that accurate?
Our number was 547. They're going to hold us to it,
Yep.
and we always want to say it before they tell us to say it.
Right. So
Fair.
Or 548, maybe it was.
I think
Yeah.
it's 548,
548.
yeah.
neither was the 8 in there.
Perfect. And then the same assumptions for the supplies, materials, equipment, software, and hardware, 2.5% increase that I applied at the region. And I believe that is it. NESDEC is in the back as well. So I think if we mirror what I'm being asked to do at the high school, I think that's doable. More narrative, which I can certainly do.
Right, they're going to see, if you look at the big picture, the growth from FY '22 through FY '28 for the CTA salaries is like over 5 million. It's a lot. So,
I think it's a courtesy and a political necessity to put it right out there
Sure.
as a headline.
Yep. And I don't know if you're interested in this, I can speak to, we have, I know where everyone is on their steps, I know where they're gonna be in 5 years, I know, I already did my salary tables to FY '27, so with assumptions in there. I have all of the data, it's just trying to put it into a narrative, which I can certainly do. And just for that, just so the public knows, my assumptions for the CTA salaries were $200K per year for retirements and a $20K per year for longevity retirements. Again, that's probably conservative, but that's a number we use for this exercise. So that's about 4 retirements a year.
and again, you might need to explain that, again, in the narrative, longevity begins when they hit their 10th year.
Yep.
So this is pretty accurate, because unless those teachers leave before they hit their 10th year, which is going to happen on occasion, but not frequently.
Right. Yeah.
This is quite predictable. And we do have, I think it's now evening out probably in this 5 years, but we do have more younger teachers at CPS. I mean, that's,
We're still pretty, I think it's around 65% still on top step, and I have that, I believe. I might be getting the two confused, but I think we're,
So they're both almost the same, because you said 66 at the
Yeah.
region and 65.
meaning
so
they're at the top
the
of
very
their
top,
step.
Yeah.
but in terms of the numbers of teachers,
There's 150 56 at the high school and 224 at CPS.
But I'm saying, how
Awesome.
many of them are now, we have a good number of younger teachers coming in and just getting into longevity, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I
So-
have all that
Yeah.
info. Yep, I can
So
explain that.
we're going to pretty soon, like, hit that purging level where most of the older teachers are gone, and then we're just going to have people moving through longevity. So I just don't think a lot of people are going to leave us, you know. It's just we're switching over. I think it's more at CPS than it's the high school. That's just my feeling. I could be totally wrong.
Right?
Well, the teachers brought an argument for equity to us, and
Yeah.
what we see is a retention factor here.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Any other questions, additions? No, I think we're good, right?
Great.
Next up is ESSER 3.
Great. Let me just jump in.
Sure.
So this is follow-up to the last conversation, similar to the high school with different numbers attached. So we've broken out our recommendations for how to spend that $995,000 over the course of these coming years. Again, this is lump sum information that's here. We haven't figured out the allocation year to year. We're going to do that with you through the budget process. So summer school at $372,000. That's a bigger event for us. We run regular ed summer school. We always have. And that could include special ed summer school as well. So that can be discussions that we have and decide how we're going to break that out. So that isn't a cliff we're building. That's some offset that we'll want to be thoughtful with, but it's a nice subsidy to what we were already doing. $100,000 for literacy, professional development, and materials. That aligns with all of the work that's happening in RTI, dyslexia, et cetera. So Kristen's pretty happy with that number. In terms of our special ed intensive programs, we've got to be sure we've got feeder programs for the ones that we've built at the elementary school. One need we've already identified at the middle school is to really put in we've had pieces of this and with success in general, but we know we have kids that need a true language-based program at the middle school. We know we need the qualified educator to come in and teach that and be credentialed in the right things in background. So that is a piece of money that can help to get that started or subsidize it for a while. Again, you'll have options. It's an increase we were going to have to build into the budget and bring you the whole FTE increase. Now we've got options to soften the roll-in of that rather than the whole position at once. So that is a good fit for what we had for coming needs. And this last one is the only thing we're actually proposing as truly an addition, but only from now until the new school opens, which sort timeline fits with ESSER, interestingly enough. This is based on the survey results, but also the needs we're seeing in the kids coming in the door here this September. It's true everywhere, but it stood out to us more at the middle school, just with their settling, I think is one word I would use. It's a good energy overall, but it's a lot of energy. It's kids who are now in 6, 7, and 8, who last time we really did a regular school environment were in upper elementary.
Yep.
Didn't get the onboarding to middle school the same way. It's just, and the mental health needs are proving to already be acute. We already had some, we're seeing it even more so this fall.
Yeah.
So what we're proposing is an adjustment counselor to support that onboarding of kids and the acclimation back to being in school full-time
But
and,
what would that person do? Like,
yeah.
I'm thinking like, okay, I get the concept of like, a child feels upset, they go to a counselor. Is it truly like that kind of one-on-one work? Or is it building sort of bigger programs to
Yeah, no,
help
we're-
larger swaths of kids?
We're targeting more the acute needs here.
Okay. Yep.
That the guidance counselor would still do the intake, and then if the acute need is determined, kind of modeling it over some of the options we have at the high school. We have an adjustment counselor for the Access program who's completely devoted to those kids who are already identified. There's a gap in between of the regular ed student who can get by with a check-in on their counselor every so often and an Access program where they're in a therapeutic environment all day. We need more in the middle.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So
it'll
it's
be
not
through the guidance counselors, referrals
Yeah.
over to the adjustment counselor.
So we don't currently have an adjustment
We
counselor in the
don't.
middle school. We have school psychologists, we have guidance counselors, but no
Correct.
adjustment counselor.
Yep.
And this is for how many years?
So we're proposing, and what we'd like to do is start it now and then decide how long, if we can fund it till the new school opens and we know we can do some consolidation, or talk with you on what the other options are. The need for some of these others, the language-based special educator, that's probably a fall 22 need that we're going to take the year to build the program and then just identify the profile. This is more urgent, so.
So what would be the estimate for the salary?
Well, it will depend on the background of the person.
obviously, yeah, but-
So I would expect we'd want at least our master's.
Yeah.
Step 7 is our normal benchmark, which is a nice place of somebody with a master's and some years of experience.
Yep.
And it's a mid-year idea, so we'll see who's out there, but
Does
But I
it
mean,
be for
so-
January? Yeah, ideally.
January or even sooner if you're
Okay.
okay with it, yeah.
So 240,000 has a run life of.
I'm just trying to get,
Depends on the person. If
but
you-
I mean, no
But-
more
Say-
than.
But this number came from somewhere, so what was what was the assumption?
80
Okay.
Thank you.
for 3 years.
Okay.
But you don't limit yourself in your hiring to masters
It depends on the position, how
Yeah.
much I will ask them to stay within a bandwidth of a salary range. This position probably is one where we're going to want to get all the resumes in
Yeah.
and decide. Typically, sped is, if you're, a 8th grade history teacher, I might say, please really stay within the master's 7.
Okay.
Because you're going to have a lot of options of really good people in that amount.
Yep,
So.
okay.
I have a question on the summer school line item. We had
Sure.
talked, I don't remember when it is, I could look at the minutes. We had talked sometimes about there being, for some constituents, like some groups of families, a barrier to enrolling in summer school for all many, whatever those reasons are,
Yeah.
immaterial, I suppose, to the discussion. But there was a brief chit chat, I think, in one of our meetings about trying to augment summer school with maybe some, I don't know what it would be, before school, after school, something where instead of an elective, you get some support to make it easier for families who can't commit to summer school but who might need increased services. Is that idea still percolating around, or do we really have to laser in on summer school?
We can certainly think more about that. And I think I said when that came up originally, we're already doing it because of our English
Right.
language learners. So
Right.
they get tutoring during the school year, at times.
Yeah.
I'll answer for Kristen and see, and we're just getting the fall data in now on where the kids are at and what their
Right.
needs are. So I think that's going to drive a lot of what we think we need to offer kids during the school year before we even come close to getting towards summer.
Okay.
So more to come. I think, too, there's going to be a discussion of what's an aggregate need of like, all first graders need to work on this particular skill
Correct.
because of the disruptions that they've had versus what's an individual need. And I have already, I'm sure we're both having this anecdotally with teachers as we see them, like, we're going to have to really talk about that because if there's an aggregate need, you're not going to offer an aggregate session to all of the kids in the certain grade level before school. You're going to use your whole class
The school
instruction
day,
and
sure.
small group
Yeah.
within the classroom.
Okay.
So we have a lot of curriculum to look at this fall, no question.
Good. I think there's a
Us
lot
and
more to
everyone.
come. As we get farther into the year, we hear from our principals.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear from them multiple times this year because I think we're going to start learning a lot of things.
We are
with
learning
having
already.
the kids in
Yep.
school full-time.
Yep.
Instead of scrambling around just to try to deliver curriculum
Yeah.
as we had to
Yeah.
last year, like every district did.
Yeah.
So I think, I think it's an opportunity to do some things different,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll just look and see what those are.
Yeah, and this grant, you've got to get your placeholders in to
Yeah.
get
Understood.
in the pipeline with further funding, and there's amendments that can be made and et cetera, so we're not.
I'm just
locked
very
in.
wary of ever saying we're going to take something away, because that's, that's virtually
Yeah.
impossible, because I'm always convinced, they're critical to are delivering good services to our kids. You can't take this person away, which I completely get. So as far as I'm concerned, they're there. They're probably not going to be going away, and I'm sure it'll be a great thing. But we just need to realize that.
Yeah, I mean, the middle school, to your point earlier on the dollar amount, there is consolidation we're going to have to do there,
Yeah.
so
So it's just a little bit of a
there is going to be
push-pull.
some
Exactly.
navigating that.
Great.
Good, thank you.
Thank you,
So
Beth.
next up, there's a lot going on with the middle school project, as the people who are on the committee are well aware. So I just wanted to, I don't think, we're not going to do a full update, but perhaps just a quick timeline, if anybody has it off the top of their head of, and I don't know the exact dates, just kind of the flow of where we are right now through maybe November. And we can have another update after we get these estimates in, but anybody want to take a stab?
No. I know that the estimating should take the better part of 4 weeks.
Yep.
We do know that the town meeting is slated for, or special town meeting for January 20. The town election was pushed off one day and now is February 3. But to your question, exactly how November is going to play out, I confess I can't say, other than
Like-
estimating. And then we've got some multiple meetings coming
Yes.
up with the committee.
Right, okay. And I have to go back and watch the tape, but I caught a few words of solar, and I think we just have to be very, very careful to be sure we all understand what's going on, but I'm not saying we're going to at all solve that tonight.
And I noted earlier that I have made inquiries about that. My assumption, and only an assumption, is that the building will be solar-ready, such that roof installation could serve up to 40% of the needs of the building. The remaining 60%, there was a time when there was talk about parking lot canopies with funding from sources unknown, requiring municipal light plant involvement.
But that obviously would need to be taken into account as the design is being finalized, so we have the parking and the canopies correctly set up.
That is correct. And
So-
also, I've been told, just anecdotally, that the Light Plant Board has been discussing this, or their director has, so I think we need to connect up with them. and-
Okay,
I've got to finish connecting there. It's,
because I think it's pretty important. No entity gets way ahead of, bringing this discussion to us.
Is the Light Plant Board moving away from the idea of solar collection on the parking lot surface?
not that I know of, so, but
Because that was the question that came my way.
okay.
Was, are they still of a mind that that's the way to go? Is the architect still of a mind that's the way to go?
So the design is being done by that third party, which I've seen a sketch of and can't understand most of it, but there was canopies in that, so.
Good, okay.
But that needs to be taken into account in the design of the building, because you have to have conduits and.
SMMA was part of that,
Right.
so.
So
But we'll
but-
get this all tightened up for you.
Okay, and then just all the
Yep.
money business, the SRACs and the revenues and all that
Yes.
stuff, so.
The thinking that's come out of Sustainability Subcommittee, I believe, is that the rooftop someday would feed directly into the building, and the parking lot would feed into the light plant's grid, but I don't,
Yeah.
I can't
that's a-
swear to that.
No, I don't want you to,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
So, yeah, I just think it's important that, everybody is on the same page. So nobody's like, oh, we left that out of the design because you told us the other way, or we put it into design and now you're changing the plan, so, right?
I think the committee understands this really is a critical piece of
Yeah, I
the
think
project.
up until now, I think our design team, SMMA, has been the cog to all of that, so we just can ask for more information on where they're at.
Okay. But it's not a building, doesn't seem to be, it's sort of weird because it's not really part of the building committee's work.
Correct.
So that's where that's, I just want to be sure we're all like synced up.
Which I think it rarely is. It's always on the municipal, in our case, municipal utility. In most cases, it's the big monster utilities.
Yeah,
And there's a
right.
third party that you're dealing with there. And the building project bows out of all of that and lets the district or the town take on the rest of the relationship. So
Right, I
you're right
just-
to stay informed, for sure.
I mean, but, should we plan on not paying for electricity because we're so flush with solar?
Hopefully, that's what
Well,
we're
that's
hoping.
that's what to be sure of.
Yeah.
They can have the
Theory,
extra.
Yes.
So, all right.
November 5 and November 12 are the next meetings.
Okay.
So people should know that that's when the estimating reconciliation will come our way. And then we will examine again, where do those estimates sit and where do they sit vis-à-vis our budget intentions and the Select Board and FinCom.
And I hope we could see a much
recommendations.
more detailed, once those estimators come in, line item budget. Like-
Well, they can only get to a good estimate with good details.
I know,
so
but it would be
that-
nice to see it. I'm sure it's
Exactly.
there.
Here, yes. yeah.
So I think it would be,
We know what it should look like, yes.
so, because I know that's how you then get out your scalpel, if you need to, and start making some cuts based on those very detailed things. Some
And we've
things,
got a very ambitious plan that may come to pass, we don't know.
Yep,
We
we
just
don't
don't
know.
know. yeah.
Exactly. All right. Anything else in the middle school building? Okay. So next up is half-day to relocate Thoreau.
So we're making our way here through the process of getting a modular wing set up in the fields. The trailers are there. They're still getting situated, so that's disrupted parking over there through tomorrow. Hopefully that's it. And then those will get utility electricity run out to them. They've actually got a portable septic and water tank on them. And once it's all ready to go at the end of the month, the next piece is to navigate the moving into the modulars.
Yep.
So the proposal here, and this was a collaborative idea with the CTA, is to look at these weeks in November, preferably the first one. That's what I've told the project managers, is that we want to be able to start moving teachers the afternoon of Wednesday the 3rd, during the day of November 4th, which is parent-teacher conferences, which is virtual. And then sometime Friday, where teachers can collaborate together. The anxiety and resilience is waning at Thoreau with the impact of this fire and the conditions they're in and another move and all of that. So the idea is that the Friday morning, they get creative with where kids need to be for those 8 settings or so that need to get creative. Bring the kids in for the half day. Then the hope is that in Friday afternoon, with a lot of contributions from the entire staff, partnering up with their buddies who are moving, et cetera, they could unpack and be ready to roll fully by, Monday. So that's where we found the best amount of time to utilize. We don't want to close Thoreau totally and have a day to make up. So that's why you're hearing that creative work on the Friday morning. If the modulars aren't ready, we could have the same plan the week after because of the Veterans Day holiday.
Sure.
So that would be an ask of you to approve a half-day on either the 5th or 12th of November, depending on the readiness of the mods. We can communicate that with families and staff and try to make the best of.
Sure.
Is that
All
something
of
like an
this.
11:20 before lunch, or what's?
It's at 12:30, they're
It's
in
at
9 to
12:30.
12:30, they don't eat lunch,
Yep.
Okay.
So how much notice, if it worked perfectly, would families have? I'm just thinking if that's
Right.
the age, unfortunately, of childcare.
Yeah, right,
issues
no
and all that
question,
jazz.
no question. My hope is we're going to see all this progress along, and we're going to know, by the beginning of the last week in October that we're on track.
Okay.
That's the hope.
What's the major hurdle?
The pace of it all, they thought all the mods would be situated last Thursday or so, and we're still moving mods around in the parking lot today.
Okay.
So things just happen slower sometimes than
Yeah,
they
sure.
think.
Is your hunch it's more like the 12th instead of the 4th?
I'm pushing them really hard for the 4th. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
That's the
over the
preferred
next
date,
Yeah.
the
week
earlier
or
date.
10
Yeah.
days, you'll probably have a better idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do know they're doing a lot of preliminary planning right now, so that once these mods are there, boom, 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 boom. The town has been incredibly collaborative on permitting and expediting all of that.
Good.
Part of, really collaborative.
Okay,
So that's all been streamlined. It's just,
yep, the other stuff.
getting through the next steps. Yeah.
Okay,
The biggest piece is running the electrical out, because they're going to actually dig to do it, because you don't want electrical stuff on the ground with kids
Oh,
around.
no. Well, we saw how fast they put up the electric for the tent, so they could do it.
They can do it.
That was
yeah.
like in
I have a
a
question.
day or two.
Kids who go to like Concord Rec after school, where would they go? Would they start that day at 12:30 or would there be a gap?
Yeah, we didn't plan that yet, so we got to
Okay.
get a hold of Anita once
Could
you.
we partner with
formalize.
Concord Rec? I mean, we actually had this question, first of all, is everything covered by insurance? The middle
Oh, yeah, the
school,
middle
they
school.
asked us that,
They
they were
were
like,
asking.
has our insurance gone up? Is everything covered? So all of these
Everything is
expenses are completely
covered. Is it going to go up? It might, sure.
Yeah,
But
okay.
we
That's
pay
the
through
nature.
But
Maya,
that's
which
just
is
what it is.
essentially self-pay.
Right.
So,
So I guess could we partner with Concord Rec, because this to me seems like an insurance cost, and if people needed childcare or a program in the afternoon, could
Potentially,
we
yeah.
offer that to them at
Yeah.
no cost?
potentially.
And some people may just opt to say, okay, it's a half-day Friday, and that's great,
Right.
but I
Let's
mean,
go out and
I
pick it.
I do think that you're gonna have
But I
a
have
lot
to
of
be in the
people that
office, I
might
need to
scramble.
Right.
My,
Yes.
I'm
my
just
only
thinking-
hesitation at no cost is everybody has to go no cost. Like, I don't know how to split between the kids who normally attend
Oh, right,
and
get that
pay versus
refund.
the
Yeah.
kids who got stuck on the random day.
Yeah,
We had some of these discussions last year in COVID.
But we do, the other question is, would there be enough staff?
right.
Yeah, if there was a large number of kids.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm just thinking, I know it's not a humongous number, but I'm sure there's a bunch of those Thoreau kids who pick up at Concord Rec at 3:30. So you've got this awkward delta. I don't know. that
Yeah,
3
yeah,
hours.
we haven't had a
Yeah,
chance to
all right,
talk
I
about
just
this.
think-
I mean, Concord Rec normally fills in the afternoon on our half-days,
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Right.
Is always that way,
Okay.
so
Okay,
maybe an option there. If they have staff, because like you said, they don't normally work Friday until 3:30, so
Right.
we'll figure it out.
good. So entertain a motion to approve early release on either Friday, November 4th, or Friday, November 12th at Thoreau Elementary School, to be determined by the availability of the modular classrooms.
Second.
All in favor?
Sounds good.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Great, thank you so much.
And I think that concludes our business this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will move that motion.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Unanimous once again. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, MMN.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.